23rd, 2024 regular meeting of the City of Troy Planning Commission. Are the mics on?
It doesn't sound. No sound coming through.
Good evening. No? No mics?
No.
Somebody's going to come running in here.
Yep. Any minute now. There it is.
You heard us.
Okay. Good evening. Good evening and welcome to the July 23rd, 2024 regular meeting of the City of Troy Planning Commission. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. Agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission.
State law establishes planning commissions. This planning commission is comprised of 9 residents appointed to serve our community. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the city council. Other individuals participating in the meeting include representatives of the city's planning department, city attorney's office, and the city's planning consultant, Carlisle Wortman and Associates.
If you wish to address the Planning Commission, please come forward to the lectern when recognized and clearly print your name and an address on the sign-in sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to be addressed to the Planning Commission, not to anyone else in the room. If you have a cell phone or any other device that might disrupt this meeting, please either switch it to silent mode or turn it off. At this time, I ask the Planning Commission Recording Secretary Kathy Zarnicki to conduct the roll call.
Mr. Buechner?
Here.
Mr. Faison?
Here.
Mr. Fox?
Here.
Mr. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Krent?
Here.
Mr. Lambert?
Here.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Here.
Ms. Parakis?
Here.
Mr. Tagle?
Here.
Quorum present, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next is the approval of tonight's agenda.
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Malala-Holly?
Is there any way we can move agenda item number 7 before agenda item number 5?
So you'd like to move the preliminary site plan approval for the Waddle Square Apartments after the public comment?
Yes.
Is
I'd like
that
to-
a,
Yes, I would like to move it before the 5th item on the
Okay.
agenda.
Second.
second by Mr. Lambert? Any discussion? All right, we're ready for the roll call.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Buechner?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from July 9th, 2024. Yep, Mr. Buechner and Mr. Fox will second that. Any discussion? All right, I think we're ready for the roll call.
Hey, Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
I'll abstain.
Mr. Buechner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is public comment for items that are not on the agenda for tonight. So if anyone's here to speak about something that's not going to be discussed tonight, already on the agenda, please come forward now. Okay, seeing nobody coming forward, we are now going to move on to what shows as item 7, which will be our next item. Preliminary site plan approval, JPLN 2023-0031. It's the proposed Waddle Square Apartment, south side of Waddles and east of John R., PIN 88-20-24-100-39, Section 24 zoned neighborhood node F zoning district. And I will turn it over to Mr. Carlisle for a presentation.
Thank you. Thank you and good evening. The first item tonight for consideration is a proposed multi-family stacked flat project. It's located on the south side of Waddles, east of John R. The site is approximately 2 acres in area. It's currently vacant and encumbered with tree cover. Plankish has seen this twice previously, so very familiar with this project. But just for a little background, it's 54 total units. It's divided into 2 separate buildings. This is the Rite Aid located here at the corner. Access to the site is 2 points off of Waddles, as well as a cross access through the Rite Aid site. The Planning Commission last reviewed this item on May 28th of 2024. The item was postponed in part to have a full board in attendance. In addition, the applicant was asked to provide a privacy fence along the south and east property line, a general traffic study, a variety of architectural expressions for the units that front on Wattles, as well as a colored rendering. With regards to traffic, we did send it to the traffic engineer consultant, OHM. They do note that during the morning peak hours, which is an hour period typically between 7 and 9, the morning peak would be about 40 total vehicles, 10 inbound, which means 10 entering the site, and 30 outbound, 30 leaving the site. The PM peak, again, it's an hour period in the evening, would be approximately 44 vehicle trips, so 28 into the site and 10 outbound. In their opinion, the overall amount of traffic generated from this site will not provide significant impacts on Wattles, John R., or the surrounding road network. With regards to the fence, the applicant has proposed a 6-foot tall stockade wood fence. The fence is going along the eastern and southern property line, and again, that abuts up with adjacent single-family residential homes. In addition, the applicant has made changes to the elevations. The applicant's architect is here to explain those details about the changes to the elevations, and they also have provided a colored rendering for the Planning Commission's review. I do want to note this is what we call a by right development. They're not seeking any special approvals from the Planning Commission. This does not go to council. So the standards under review for this project are the site plan review standards. Development shall ensure compatibility between existing commercial districts and provide transitional land uses. Development shall incorporate the recognized best architectural building practices, as well as the project shall enhance the character, environment, and safety for pedestrians and motorists. The Planning Commission, in summary, should consider the compliance with regards to the site plan review standards set forth in Section 806. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Carlisle? Yeah, Mr. Lambert?
Thank you. Mr. Carlisle, could you, I know most of the feedback that we've gotten forwarded to us from citizens have been concerns expressed about, does this really fit in this area? So could you go into a little bit more explanation of the neighborhood node at this particular location and also explain what the by right development means?
Yeah, so thank you for mentioning that. So two things I do want to add is that we have received a number of comments with regards to this project. It was all included in the packet that both the previous one as well as the most recent comments. In addition, if anything that was sent to our office by 3 o'clock this afternoon was also printed out and handed to the Planning Commission tonight, so all your comments have been received and reviewed by the Planning Commission. So, Mr. Lambert, to your point about the node, this is actually a node that we spent a lot of time looking at in the master plan update. In fact, it was a node that we did a walking tour of, and there were a few members of the public that did that walk with us. The nodes are intended to be a transitional area between larger commercial development, more dense commercial development, especially those on the arterial hard major mile roads, and the adjacent residential neighborhoods behind it. And this is a classic example of kind of a transition node. You have the more intense Rite Aid use of the corner, which is vacant and turning over and is going to be something else. And you have the more transitional land use as you move away from the hard corner to a townhome use to then a single-family residential use. Townhome uses or low-scale multifamily uses are a classic transitional land use between commercial development, more dense multifamily development, and adjacent single-family residential. So from a planning world, this is a classic example of a transitional land use and density where you have a much more intense use in the corner, potentially more intense coming once Rite Aid redevelops, which it will. This development, which is a lower scale, intense residential development, and single-family adjacent. In addition, when we review site plans, one of our primary concerns is impact on adjacent properties. We spent a lot of time reviewing this particular project. And so when we talk about impact, we talk about light, noise, odor, sound, traffic impacts. So the applicant has tried to mitigate as many of those impacts as possible. There's no direct connection to the adjacent neighborhood. If this were to be a single-family project, it's not zoned for that, but if it were to be somehow rezoned to a single family, it's likely or probably would require a connection directly to the neighborhood behind it. So they've mitigated that impact by not connecting to the adjacent neighborhood. They've added additional landscape screen along the adjacent property lines that share with those neighbors. They've added a fence to mitigate impact, and they've reduced the height to meet the minimum, maximum height requirement in the district. And all traffic, as I noted, does enter and exit onto a major mile road. So we do also consider the impact and mitigating impacts of this. So from a land use perspective, this is a good transitional land use, as well as it's a low impactful use with regards to the adjacent properties and what could happen at this particular site and the other elements the applicant has tried to do to kind of reduce that impact. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, but it was a long-winded answer to what you asked.
What about the by right issue?
Yes, oh, thank you. So developments can either have what we call by right, which means they meet all the zoning ordinance requirements and standards in the zoning ordinance. That means they meet the height requirements, they meet the lighting requirements, they meet all the requirements. They don't seek any what we call special approvals from the Planning Commission or the Zoning Board of Appeals or Council. So they are not seeking a variance from the Planning Commission. This does not require a consideration of rezoning by City Council. This is an action by the Planning Commission based on the fact that they are not seeking any special approvals and they're not seeking any relief from the zoning ordinance. It meets all the zoning ordinance requirements. What's up for discussion with the Planning Commission tonight is, do they meet the standards that I mentioned earlier? These three standards, do they meet these three standards? But again, they're not seeking any relief from the zoning ordinance in terms of variance, rezoning, et cetera.
Yes, Ms. Malala Holly.
Thank you. Ben, I just have a clarification that I'm seeking here. Although we are talking about this apartment complex here, but there is also a small community center that is being chipped away from the existing Rite Aid and trying to provide some kind of amenities for the residents. And Rite Aid currently, to my understanding, is not in business, which means it's currently vacant. And if that were to be turned around into something else, what will happen to that community space that is going to be part of this project?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So originally, when we met with the applicant, so the applicant owns both parcels. He owns this parcel as well as this parcel. When we met with the applicant the first time, there was a lot of shared amenities between the two sites, including parking, access. Like you noted, there's a small recreation space in this particular corner of the development. And they were two separate parcels. Mm-hmm. What we did to make it easier is we have them combine the parcels. So now this is one entire parcel. If the site plan is approved with this particular amenity as part of it, it's a site plan approval. They have to keep this amenity, even if the rest of the Rite Aid redevelops, unless they come back to the Planning Commission and you amend the site plan at a future time to eliminate or to reduce it, eliminate it, or repurpose this particular portion. That would be the purview of the Planning Commission to do that in the future. But if you approve it with this now, it would remain as is until you take an action to remove it. I do want to note, this is not a zoning ordinance requirement. They're not required to put this in. They're doing it as an amenity to their development. And so it's not a requirement, but if you approve the site plan, it would remain in perpetuity until the Planning Commission in the future, if the Planning Commission in the future would ever remove it.
Thank you.
Yep, Mr. Buechner.
Mr. Carlisle, did you say it does go to City Council or not? I couldn't.
Not go to City Council. It's an action of the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fox.
Would that also include any hypothetical actions to potentially expand the recreational space that would also need our approval?
Yeah, so if they want to expand, it would require them to come back to the Planning Commission and seek a reapproval of an expanded use of that particular site, part of the property.
Mr. Faison.
Ben, what's the height of these buildings, and how does it compare to the single-family residential that's adjacent?
So the maximum height in this district is 30 feet in height. Let me get to that. So 30 feet in height. So as we measure in our neighborhood nodes, the measurement is actually from the foundation or at the grade to the highest point of the roof. So in this particular case, this is 30 feet. The adjacent single-family residential neighborhood could be up to 35 feet in height. Typically, they're slope roofs, and so as we measure slope roofs, it's actually it's confusing, but it's to the midpoint of the roof. So in fact, most single-family homes are actually taller than 35 feet when you actually go to the peak. So realistically, most single-family homes are actually going to be taller than what this flat roof is going to be.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Carlisle? Okay, we'll invite the applicant up if they'd like to come up and present anything.
Good evening again, and thank you for having us before this board again. Mr. Carlisle elaborated on most of what our presentation was about. I just want to stress a couple of things that we did go with this profile roof to keep it, instead of the sloped roof, it would just be more massive, and we thought this was a better solution for the transition. And although the ordinance allows a maximum of 30 feet, we only have 30 feet in very few areas, so the amount of the building that's 30 feet is maybe 6%. The rest of the 90-some percent is about 28 and a half feet. And at the last meeting, there was a comment about, it might be a good idea to put a fence, so we proposed a 6-foot-high fence at the south and east property lines. And then Stacy here is our architect, and made some modifications or clarifications to the elevations, and we brought the color rendering that you see on the screen and also on the board. So if there's any other questions, and there was some questions along the way about egress, and I think we answered most of them, but if anything needs clarification, we're happy to do that right here and now.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Wait and see if they want.
Yep, Mr. Lambert.
I took another drive around your property yesterday and noticed that there was a large number of trees, older trees around the site. And when I looked at the plan, it looked like those older trees are going to be maintained, but they'll be on the outside of the fence. Is that correct?
I don't know exactly how many, but we did do a tree survey, and every tree, and some of them are not suitable to even be maintained. So any viable tree that falls within our green belt, which is somewhat generous because we wanted to have a buffer zone, will remain for sure.
And what about the landscaping on the inside of the fence? What height are those going to be? To begin with, I know they'll grow, but.
Yeah, I don't remember. I know we proposed several pine trees. I can actually get that answer right in a few minutes by looking it up, but they're pine trees and some deciduous trees that are typically, pines are usually a minimum of 7 to 8, and the deciduous are usually 2 to 2.5 inch caliper. And there's quite a few of them.
Thanks.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Thank you. This question may have been asked before, so I apologize if I'm asking it again.
It's okay.
This is for rent, correct?
They're for rental
for
units.
rent. Okay. Can you just tell me, when you envision this project in this space, what kind of demographic are you kind of envisioning that will come make this their home or temporary residence, if you will?
I wasn't the owner, but I was the contractor for the project that was just completed on John R. east of Big Beaver. And when that project was originally proposed, I suggested that no building, there's 5 buildings, no building required an elevator. I suggested an elevator so that we could increase the amount of availability. So there's single people, there's families with young children, there's older people, it's very diverse as far as ethnicities, and that's what makes something successful. Not tailored, it's only going to be young people, or it's only going to be retirees, or no. We want it to be open to everybody.
Okay.
Especially in Troy now, it's a growing city. There's a lot of new businesses coming, and some young families can't buy a house at this point in time, and if they live there temporarily or permanently because rental units are longer. I wanted it to be, if I was renting there, am I renting there so as soon as I could move out as fast as I can, or will I be comfortable to stay there for a long period of time? That's why there's a lot of open space. There's a little dog park, there's some shared space that people can grill and meet, and again, the community building wasn't required, but I wanted there to be some kind of community building, and I think, unfortunately, Mr. Carlisle wasn't here at the first two meetings, but we did have discussions about if a tenant came along and you know, if that community center couldn't be there for whatever reason, we committed in public into this, in front of this board, that we would have a minimum square footage that we have now within the building. And even if it meant losing a unit or two, we made that commitment, and it's, you know, in the public forum, and that's our commitment. We put a community building because we feel it's going to help strengthen the development. And if it can't be there, it will be within one of the buildings that we're proposing.
I
So
see.
I want to reinforce that.
Okay, so the community center will remain. You're saying that it will remain in the same place, or in the future it may be relocated, but it will
If
still
we
be
have to, but we will,
available?
we do not plan to eliminate it.
Okay.
To me, it was an important part of the development, and it also created more of a mixed-use type thing where you can walk back and forth, and a lot of thought has gone into this, and I, just like you repeated, I like to repeat the same things over and over. So I didn't just show up here. I've been here for 40 years. So I was waiting for it could have been developed 10 years ago if I wanted a particular development that I thought would be long-term and positive for the city, and this is what I feel is the right thing to do, and I propose it at this time. And the way that they're designed, having some of the units below, that's a risk for me that, you know, maybe it won't be as attractive and I'll have a harder time leasing them. But for me, I wanted to keep the profile of the structures lower and be more compatible with the neighborhood. And that's the theme throughout. I think I said it. I said, the first thing I said is if that was going to be next door to me, what would I want? I'd want it farther away from my house as possible, as much landscaping as possible, a lot of outdoor spaces, lower profile, all the things that if somebody was going to build next to me, that's what I'd want. I personally wouldn't want a fence because I want it to be part of the neighborhood, not segregated, but as a good faith, cooperative gesture, if the neighborhood believes it's better to have a fence, I'm happy to do it. I'll be happy to take it down if years go by and they say, you know, we don't like the fence, but right now we're proposing it and it'll be in place as long as, if it gets damaged, we'll replace it again and again and again. We maintain our properties also.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yep. So this isn't a public hearing tonight. I know we did receive a lot of emails, and we've heard from the neighbors at the previous meeting and maybe the one before that, but I want to take a consensus quick to just of the Planning Commission. There are a lot of people here tonight. Do we want to open up to hear comments? Do we want to do a show of hands of general opposition, which is something we've done in the past, to get a consensus of the audience of why they're here, whether they approve or oppose, or, yeah, go ahead.
Can we start with hands? A show of hands?
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Can we start there and see where that is?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm making an assumption that a lot of people are here tonight for this particular project. That is why we moved it up on the agenda, so we know you're here. How many of you are here tonight because you oppose this project, the way it's been presented? Okay.
I count 29.
I got 26.
26?
And I
Between
had-
26 and 29.
I had 27, so.
There you go.
I had met 3 people.
We don't
Wait.
count very well. Might have missed a hand. Okay.
And how many, is there anyone here tonight who is in support of this project? The applicant. The applicant and his team. Okay. So again, I mean, it's not a public hearing. If I'm inclined to just note what the neighbors are here tonight to tell us, and I'm hoping everyone read through the emails so we know what the issues are. But if anyone feels strongly or differently, we can, I'm here to see what everyone thinks. Yes, Mr. Faison.
So I seem to recall the last time we did the show of hands, we weren't the approving body, we were the recommending body. Is that correct? And we did the show of hands so the city council knew the number of people that were here for or opposed. Anyway, my point is, I wouldn't mind hearing the comments from the public.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Mr. Lambert?
I would agree, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Tagle?
I would like to know, whoever comes up to speak, to tell us the proximity of their property to this property and what impact they personally would feel that this project would do to their property.
Okay. All right, so then Mr.
And since I read through all of their responses in their emails sent to the planning department, I've got a really clear picture, I think, already, but so keep your comments short. I think we all are well versed in from your emails.
Okay, I'm inclined then to allow a public comment tonight. If anyone of us felt strongly about it, and I think we do, so I will go ahead and open that up. Are you running the timer for me? Okay, so you get 3 minutes. You don't have to use the full 3 minutes, but when you do come up, please put your name and address down and introduce yourself, and we'd like to hear what you have to say.
Good evening to all the Planning Commission members. And my name is Hari Babu Batla, and I live in Maka Drive, which is less than 200 square yards to the proposed development. So I wanted to bring up a few more concerns that we were there in the last meeting held on the month of May, and we brought up few concerns, and thanks to all the members that you heard our voices and then you responded positively, like referring for the fence and also the traffic memo. And here tonight, I came along with our fellow members that to bring up few more points. The points are mainly the traffic and kids' safety concern, first concern, and I will elaborate. And then second one is the privacy, particularly for me, as I'm getting impacted close by living within 200 yards. And also the trash disposal, which will attract the most vermin, and we are living close by, that is one of the reasons. And also the proposed parking lots, what proposed as per the plan. Because the reason about the proposed parking lots, you brought up the point about the closed rated building, but I do see a board that it is available for new lease. It was there for last, I think, few months, I was seeing that. So if anybody took the lease for that building and they need parking spaces, and this apartment, the proposed apartments are, I think, allocated about 105 parking lots, but that would be as per ordinance and norms. But my general question is, usually how about the guests used to go for any weekend gatherings and any parties who will attend, because there are going to be 50 plus apartments and allowing only, allocated only 105 flats, which will be sufficient only for the tenants. If you take two cars for family. So if 2 to 3 people are doing any gathering or parties during the weekends, mostly will happen. So where the guest will park in that apartment, that is one. The first one is the traffic and the kids' safety is, we emphasize, and also my humble request to all the members that to refer for a traffic study once the school starts, once the new school year starts in September. The main reason, currently the traffic is very low, And once the school starts, the traffic will be huge, particularly during the school starts and dismissal times. And also, most of our neighborhood high school kids walk on the walkway to the school, which is a dark, because 3/4 of the school year is going to be dark because school starts at 7 and the sunrise will rise after 7. So that is a major concern. And the privacy, would you allow me a few more
It's
seconds?
indicating that your time's up. I'm sorry.
Would you allow me a few more seconds, please? Maybe.
Go ahead and finish your thought.
Yeah, the privacy concern, it will be a huge privacy concern for me because I live very close by, and there will be a lot of noise and also light pollution for me, and I cannot use my backyard or front yard. So, and where I made a potential investment for my house and paying higher taxes every year, and having these high-density apartments will create a lot of privacy issue for me, and it will restrict to stay in the house. I cannot go outside, front yard or backyard, even for all my neighbors as well. But at the same time, we heard that it's not a public hearing, and there is no public hearing for this particular development, as this is a private property. But if you want it, if your decision is going to be different than what we expect as we are opposing, so we would like to make sure and ensure that as part of plan that regarding the building a wall instead of a fence, a minimum 6 feet wall, across the east and south and east boundaries, and also there are high-rise trees across the property line. I think those won't be disturbed for these construction. So as one of the members that suggested that we can keep, if they keep the trees, it would be good. And also there are 2 lines of the plants that they proposed to plant, but what type of plants are not mentioned. Okay. But we would recommend if they can plant green giants, which will grow fast and also will grow more than 20 feet or so.
Okay, thank you.
But at the same time, we need recommendations to keep opposed. What are the next steps for us? The reason I brought up, because there is no public hearing, I brought up these points, but we need your guidance. What are the next steps to keep opposed this development? Because.
Thank you.
And one more point, we are not against.
Sir, there are 29 people here.
We are not against building apartments. We are not against for building apartments. We are not against for the tenants. But we are opposing building the apartment complex in such a small place.
Okay, thank you. We got to move on to the next person. Thank you.
All right, good evening. My name is Fred Shibish, and I live on Wayfarer Drive, which butts up right against the property in question. What I want to bring to the table tonight for everybody to understand is the traffic safety issues. And I'm going to give you guys a little bit of insight as to why I think the OHM traffic study is really invalid for this area. First of all, it's a very generic situation. It wasn't done by the city of Troy, okay? We have, I think, some very unique situations here. We have 3 major schools. We have Athens, we have Larson, and we have Barnard within a mile of that intersection. We also have a major Raintree Park there, and we also have the Boys and Girls Club. Nowhere else in the city of Troy do we have that kind of a situation. So which means we got a lot of congestion in that area already, all right? We have 2 of the egresses on that property are going through basically merge lanes, all right? That means they're either going to be shooting out across the street into a merge lane, or they're going to be trying to get through a merge lane to go in. The merge lanes go east and west there, and that's a problem right now. Go there anytime during traffic hour and watch people race, try to get in front of the other people. It's ridiculous. 2 of the egresses are going to be right on Waddles, which is a really major problem. The OHM talks about 54 units, but it doesn't talk about the number of spaces we're talking about 120 spaces. So, again, I think that kind of flies in the face. The biggest problem I see really is the traffic accidents that have happened in that area. I've got documentation from the city of Troy that we have over 261 traffic accidents in that area in the last 4 years alone. And I'll be glad to give that to you because it's your own city engineering department that provided that information for me. And if you'd like it, I can give you a copy of it right now. So in order to consider a very high-density situation like this is inappropriate for that area, period. So I wish you guys would consider that. We're not opposed to the appropriate type of building in that area. We just don't think this is appropriate.
Thank you.
Let me provide this for you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak tonight? Come on up.
Humberto Gonzalez. I'm a physician in the area, and I live in 3939 McCaw Drive. So my house is immediately behind the apartment complex. My petition to the committee is to oppose the construction of a multifamily complex. Multiple reasons, some of them have already been cited. Of course, traffic. I'm not really certain where the information presented was obtained, really was not cited. But if you really cross to this area, you would see that traffic is, really problematic. Second is privacy. As you can see by the display, 30 feet and 8-foot wall really don't add up. So there's really no privacy out there. And then finally, I would just like to ask every one of you, how do you feel if a construction of such magnitude were beside your home? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Look for the sign-up sheet.
Oh.
Right here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pete Wilkins. I spoke at the last meeting that we had this presented here. I delivered a petition with about 100 signatures that came from our neighborhood as well as some of the surrounding areas. I know that our neighbors just to the side of us in Estates of Willowbrook, they also presented a signed petition as well. And then in addition to that, since that meeting, we did some more outreach to members of the community. I don't know if it made it in time for the 3 o'clock cutoff, but we did have a change.org petition that went out. It has over 400 signatures on that petition, majority of them from the greater Troy area. So it's not just our voices, it's the voices of the community as well that kind of disagree with the use of this land. I think last time I spoke about the intent that's written into the ordinance, and I really still feel that this is not the proper use of this land. It doesn't meet the intent of that ordinance. We talked about how it's supposed to meet the basic needs of the community. It should draw people in, and we're really given this sort of dilapidated building that has been vacant. One of the buildings that is attached to the Rite Aid, been vacant for 10 years. Nothing's really been done to that property. There has been times where we've had to call to have things taken care of, both in this plot of land, in terms of like tree overgrowth and things like that. I know he speaks that he takes care of the properties. The evidence doesn't really support that. You can go look for some of those complaints that we have filed previously. And we talk about things like transition, good transition, right? I mean, it's not just building variation, but this is something that I think would be okay as a transitionary piece in between the commercial and the residential. But if you look across the street at the Enclave, they have the multifamily condos that back up to those yards there. It provides good transition from something that is single family into multifamily, into a little bit more dense rental, and then to commercial. And so I think the big challenge that we're looking at here is the sheer density of this. I mean, 54 units is the number of units that exist in our subdivision alone, ours being Wattle Square, the one that's abutting directly to this property. That impact can be on schools. Traffic is a major concern, and I don't think that study really did it justice. I would love to see a full study performed on this. I worry about the safety of our kids. We love to walk our kids around that block all the way around there. And, people coming and going, even when the Rite Aid was there, was already dangerous as it was. And now we're adding, 100-something plus cars going in and out of this place. I worry about parking overflow. People that are going to end up parking in other areas besides that area. It doesn't seem like it's sufficient. I know another person, I think, that couldn't be here tonight, they were also curious about snow removal. It's a very, very tight space. Where does all that go? Does it actually consume some of the parking spaces? And then what happens to those people? Do they overflow? And then someone asked a question about trees earlier. 5 trees. That's the only thing that's staying on the entire lot. I pulled it right from the plan.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Anyone else?
Pen not working. Yeah, I moved into subdivision 1989. Been living on Wayfair and watched a lot of the developments going on in and around the area. And when they wound up doing the condo development on the north side of Wattles, east side of John R., that was okay. It fit well with the area. I enjoyed a 400 or 500 foot field out to back all the way to John R., which was convenient for a lot of things. And of course, another subdivision came in, but it was okay because it fit. It fit aesthetically, it fit dramatically with the existing subdivision. You, sir, you said that you drove around the area. Looking at that area, you're going to put 54 units on 2 acres. Our subdivision is 54 units on 15 acres. We enjoy a suburban community with our own property without a lot of high density of people and traffic. So I think I'm asking for your consideration to see, does this really fit with this environment? The seclusion of the gate, of the fences and whatnot, I don't think tells a story. The other thing is I would dispute the traffic flow in and out of that condo unit. We have a restaurant on the corner. We have a dress shop, a pet store, and a dentist. There's no walking to nightlife or enjoyment. You're going to get in a car and you're going to drive somewhere. You have to drive at least a mile to get to a drugstore, to get to a grocery store, to get to anything. So the traffic is going to be more significant than what the gentleman has proposed. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, committee. So I just want to add my voice to previous comments. I live in Mount Vernon subdivision, about half a mile away, even though I'm not too close. But I also think that the traffic study that was made is not sufficient. It doesn't provide a lot of evidence or data. With a complex that has about 54 units, I do believe that there will be some impact on traffic. I go through John R. and Wattles almost daily, and I do believe there will be impact on traffic. Secondly, related to this was something that was also brought up in some of the group communities, is related to the energy. We do already have some challenges with outages related to storms, and it seems like this complex also will be part of the DTE grid. So there has to be some consideration on how this also impacts the current grid and the capacity for the current residents. So I hope there is a good study on that front. And last point is related to security with rental location. Possibly tenants will be on a one-year contract. Again, adding my voice to the security of the place, as we have family, friends, kids, usually within walking distance to that location. We would like to have some consideration on how this place is going to be secure for the people within the surrounding areas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, members of the Troy Planning Commission. My name's Angela. I've lived in Wayfarer my entire life. And I just wanted to first thank you all so much for opening this up to public comment. I know we all really appreciate the opportunity to have our voices heard. And so, as I mentioned, I've lived here my entire life in the neighborhood next to this proposed development, and I worked with my neighbors here to set up a petition online, and we have received over 500, or I think exactly 509 residents have signed this petition opposing this development. We've also received an outpour of public comments on Nextdoor, on Facebook, and on Change.org of other concerned residents of Troy that are strongly opposed to this. I have many concerns, and these concerns, as I've mentioned, are shared across the residents that I've talked to, and that includes, one, the zoning issues. The plan does not satisfy the intent of the neighborhood nodes outlined in the zoning ordinance, and it fails to serve the basic needs of the community as it does not act as a 21st century village center. Our second concern is traffic congestion and safety. The development will significantly increase traffic at the already busy intersection of Waddles and John R., posing safety risks for both pedestrians and drivers, especially children. I love to go on jogs throughout the day and ride my bike in the area. This is where I grew up, and that would be very sad to myself and I know a lot of community members. Another thing is the environmental impact. So Michigan's climate projections, we will have significantly increased precipitation events. And so reducing this land that would be able to soak up that water and reduce flooding and reduce the velocity would significantly impact our neighborhood. It would also displace wildlife and negatively impact the residents' mental and physical well-being. As you mentioned, there's a lot of old trees there, and we have a lot of love for the trees. Another thing is privacy loss. Clear-cutting the existing growth would eliminate any notion of privacy for neighboring homes. And then community character, our quiet residential neighborhood with strong community ties will be disrupted by high-density housing. School overcrowding. So we all know how loved Troy School District is, and the increased population may strain our local schools, which already is a major draw for families moving to the area. Another and our final concern is a drawn-out construction period. The surrounding neighborhoods have already experienced a lot of construction in recent years when almost all the woods nearby were cut down to construct a new neighborhood. This proposed project would result in another long period of increased air, noise, and light pollution for our community. So overall, this proposed development, I will wrap it up, threatens our community character, safety, and environment, and we urge the Planning Commission to consider the voices of the 509 residents who have signed our petition and the numerous concerns raised. We ask that you prioritize the well-being and wishes of your constituents by denying this development proposal. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. And thank you. We really appreciate you let us speak. Thank you. I know you know what we feel, and you still let us speak. Thank you. I did speak in the first meeting. I want to talk about three things. One, the traffic study really is not the accurate one, because I did speak to the city. It seems there's something called traffic memo and traffic analysis. And traffic memo follows some algorithm that a 50 apartment complex would put in about 28 or 30 cars on the street. And I'm like, when was this algorithm made? When women were at home and green phones were on the wall? I mean, if you have a 54 apartment, there are going to be 100 cars on the road. So there's something wrong with the algorithm. Please check when was it last updated. It is not recent. The other thing is, whenever you'll check the apartment, the traffic, do it when the school is on, because that's when peak is peak. So please do that for that. The second thing I wanted to ask you is, I know it seems as if the entire city administration is under pressure for this middle-income housing and making housing cheap. I want to know, and please find out, how many single households do we have in Troy versus apartment households? And if you could just see a number 5 years ago versus now, probably then maybe citizen experience will be the same as the administration experience. I think there's a disconnect somewhere. We do feel as if there are too many apartments coming up. So maybe we need to find out a ratio of how many apartments versus single family household does the city of Troy have. The third thing I want to talk about is the property. Now, this property, if you see Rite Aid, there was a salon called Maximilian. It's been closed for the past 10 years. I used to get my hair cut there. I still get my hair cut by a lady who worked at Maximilian 10 years now. So I have a connection with Maximilian for the past 15, 18 years. That building was let go. It's blight. It's not in Troy, it's not in Detroit, that's why it's not called blight, but otherwise it's blight. So please look at how you're interpreting neighborhood nodes. I feel as if there is a possibility, or my concern is, you are rewarding lazy business people. Because what happens to this apartment complex? There will be flooding. Each one of us have spent at least $10,000 getting our basement fixed because of the water issue. This basement will have water. This basement will have mold. This basement will not spend $10,000 like we did. And then what? It's going to be blight. Maximilian was a blight. So please, when you're looking at this, don't reward lazy business people. I'm sorry. Don't reward lazy business people, because that property I still get my hair cut from the same person. So that's another thing I really want us to start thinking that, and someone within you has to take the Planning Commission has to have a vision, not just a check mark. Sorry, the city attorney can do the check mark. You'll provide the vision of what Troy has to be.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next.
Madam Chairman and everyone, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity for us to speak about this. I was going to talk about the safety hazard, the traffic and all that stuff, but I'd like to focus on something else now, because they all have mentioned it, so I don't want to waste your time on that. However, I'd like to talk about why is the applicant want to maximize use of his land? Why is he building a 54-unit, 3-story apartment complex unit like this? Why is the applicant not thinking about a single-family homes or 10-unit or 12-unit townhouse complex? Why is he maximizing the use of this land? Why? Do we really need more this apartment? There's already an apartment complex just down the walls, 1 mile south of that. Jana and 16, there's just recently built, right? Do we really need another complex like this? We don't. We really don't. Why are we approving the applicant's this proposal like this? Because he's greedy. Why are you want to entertain this kind of a project? Because he's greedy. You're creating all this risk for all these existing kids that's walking into Athens in the morning and in the afternoon, piss off the 509 existing residents, people living in the area. Why do we want to do that? Think about it. Think about it, every one of you. Can you please, think about why do we really want to do it? We don't. So I urge you to just reject this project, and if the applicant proposes something less dense, lower density, maybe we don't get so much noise and voice like this, right? Right? I still got a minute left. I'm not going to use that, but I'd like you guys to use that minute to think about it. Every one of you. Mr. Fox, too. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. My main problem with the apartment complexes would be the morning traffic that it would cause. There's hundreds of new, inexperienced drivers coming through those intersections every morning when school starts. Every moment, a new person is getting their driver's license at that school, getting a car, starting to drive. This is going to cause a major problem as more people are going to be coming out of those apartments, causing traffic and possible injuries to new drivers. Not only is it going to cause possible injuries to new drivers, but also experienced drivers. As there's more flow coming out, people are always going to be driving in those intersections. There's major schools, Barnard, Larson, Hill Elementary School, Athens High School, IA, and Baker, all within a mile radius. These schools all have drivers coming in and out using those intersections. These intersections will be affected by these apartment complexes. Not only will they be affected for drivers, but also pedestrians. In the morning times, I personally have to drive out at 6:30 a.m. But say you're walking from a house, you have to go earlier. People are going to be driving out of these apartment complexes in the morning and possibly could not see these young students crossing streets and possibly cause injury and bodily harm to these people as they're just trying to get to a simple day of school. That is my main problem with apartment complexes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Trey Bryce. I'm an attorney with Taft Law. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Churbis, who lives on Wayfair Drive, right in the adjacent Waddles Square subdivision. I kind of went at the end on purpose because I think I can help crystallize some as if we can frame all this public opposition into the ordinance and what you guys are here supposed to do. What do these comments mean when you judge them? And there's two things you've got. You've got the neighborhood node, the zoning, and then the subdivision, the site plan approval. And when we go through the points, it kind of helps you see what you're supposed to do. The intent of the neighborhood node, as it clearly states in the ordinance, is supposed to be a social neighborhood, create a livable community. Questionable, does that really, beyond the apartment complex, does it do anything there? It's supposed to be mixed use. There's been no presentation of the commercial part that's going to be there. We've heard comment that it's sat vacant part of it sat vacant for a long time. Rite Aid, we know, has unfortunately closed all its doors, and that will be vacant. And the intent behind it, you can see the comments in the ordinance, is there's supposed to be a mixed use, commercial on the bottom, residential on top, not the lot situation that this would create if that building stays there or gets redeveloped. So it doesn't quite meet that intent. There's no neighborhood gathering place that's created out of this. It really doesn't accommodate daily needs of the residents beyond their living, not the rest of what this mixed use idea is. The node also has design attributes, and one is supposed to be flexible use of the outdoor space for gathering and plaza, which doesn't exist here. Small little questionable tiny park, which the picture pictures show 4 people standing, not really a gathering social area. And then we have, interestingly, the building attributes. And that one says ground level, and then it talks about what the height should be. And that shows the intent that what the commission thought when they were passing these ordinances was they're supposed to be a ground level, not a garden level. And so if there's a ground level, we have too many stories, it's too tall. And since we've heard in the previous meetings, essentially kind of backdoored into it's only 2 stories because since we dug into and created a garden level, doesn't count, it's considered a basement, which isn't a story. Well, if we're going to use the definitions and the intent, then we should use what does ground level mean? And ground level is pretty clear, it should be ground level. And so if we're going to use one of the definitions to zone, we need to use all of them. It's supposed to be the transitional area. We've heard plenty of comments and questions about whether it meets that. Then we've got the site plan review standards, and we'll go through them all, just kind of the ones that come up and point is it's supposed to ensure the compatibility and provide the transition. Question if it does that. Enhance the character, environment, and safety of motorists and pedestrians. It doesn't really do that. We've got the hanging porches, which is a pedestrian problem. We're going to drive through a commercial area, which if they wouldn't have combined lots would have been denied because we've already seen that by commission here. That's a danger for pedestrians going through commercial. And then the traffic study. And we've seen that problem with the traffic study, and I'll go really quickly, is they've used the wrong standards. If it's a 3-level what it really is, it's a mid-rise, and they've used the wrong standard for low-rise, and that will change some of the traffic studies. And they didn't look at the intersection, which we have seen is a huge problem. The roads can handle the cars, but the intersection can't. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
Hi everyone, my name is Ravi. I live in Estates of Willowbrook subdivision. I talked in the previous 2 meetings, and I'm the president of the subdivision. So last time I submitted the written concerns with all the signatures of our subdivision. First of all, I'd like to thank the committee to hear all our concerns. So the traffic study, you hear from all of us, many of us, it is not appropriately done because, since the last meeting, I personally, we're walking through the subdivision every day in the evening for the evening walk to see how it feels actually. And I don't know what data it was used, but if you actually look at in the morning time when the schools are there is already heavy traffic with 54 units. And with the Rite Aid complex, I'm still not sure whether the Rite Aid, I still see a board which says it is out for leasing. So I don't know if that will be leased out to somebody. There will be more traffic there. So the traffic data that was submitted is not completely appropriate. That needs to be relooked at. And, I saw there is a fence that is being agreed upon. But the Estates of Willowbrook, we already have a fence across John R. that we built for the privacy and safety reasons. And, the fence material and how, what kind of material that will be used, we just want to make sure, we have a voice, we have our voice heard on that aspect as well so that the fence can be matched up with what we currently have if it is going that far, really. And there are a lot of mature trees across that area. We want to make sure none of the trees are destroyed, despite the fence aspect of it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so one more person.
Let's see. Oh, I didn't write that one. Isn't right too early there. I'm Ellen Thomas, and thank you for allowing us to talk today.
I live in the Mount Vernon Estates subdivision on Cumberland, just a few blocks away from this new subdivision. This is the first time I've seen this architectural drawing, and I'm just appalled at it. I feel it's just another step into an asphalt jungle. It has no real architectural style. It's stark, unappealing. I don't feel that it takes and even fits in with the the homes that were right directly across across Wattles from this new proposed site. That's just something I learned, I felt today. I came here really to talk about the trees and to see that they're cutting down all these trees in this area, to me, is an atrocity. There's a global climate crisis going on, and trees provide us with oxygen to breathe. They take and clean the soil. They take and hold the soil together. Animals need these trees for habitat. We've got deer and all kinds of animals, fox and turkeys and things roaming our subdivision now because the different trees are being cut down close by. And I feel over on Square Lake, there's a new subdivision going in, and that's an atrocity because they don't have proper drainage installed in that area. And the homes will be taken and flooding when they're built because the same thing has happened, I'm learning now, on Square Lake on the other side of Rochester Road, where I'm talking about the new sub going in, is between Rochester Road and John R., right next to an elementary school. And the traffic jam there is an atrocity also. And the school buses have a horrible time going in and out of that little school. Cars going up and down there in the morning are terrible, you know, and it's dangerous for little children around there. But getting back to this site, I don't want to see this type of site wind up being similar. It's something that we feel as citizens that all of you are the guardians of our natural well-being here, of the nature, and we feel that this type of really unnecessary destruction of nature, trees cut down. And look at this, just look at the building itself. There's not one tree there to look at. And who wants to live in a place like that when you look across the street and within the different subdivision, the beautiful homes that exist there? But
Thank you. Your time's up. Thank you.
but that's all I have to say.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm Laura Wilkins. I sent you multiple emails as well, and my husband spoke tonight as well. I don't like talking in front of people, so I'm going to read off my notes if you don't mind. So I just wanted to mention that we've spent a lot of time in research trying to look up what the nodes were supposed to be and what the standards were. And based off of what we've read and what we've seen so far, this building just does not meet the standards of what these nodes state. If you look at this building, it looks like a strip mall. It looks like something you would see on off of Big Beaver or something in like Royal Oak or something somewhere else. Our neighborhood was built in the 80s. Our homes are traditional looking homes, and then all of a sudden we're just gonna throw in basically an apartment building that looks like a strip mall. It just doesn't fit the area. We have 3 neighbors who are at the end of our subdivision who are now going to have a fence facing their backyard, and they're also going to have the parking lot facing their backyard. We have two neighbors that are in the subdivision behind us who are also now going to have a fence with the parking facing their yard. The light pollution is going to be awful. I mean, a 6-foot fence is not going to block out all the lights, all the noise. I just don't understand how this is something that fits in our area. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the community, it's supposed to build the community, and I haven't seen anything or heard anything from the developer or the architect on what is there to offer for the people who are here already. There's a community center for the residents that are going to be in this building. There is no green space for any of those people around for us to gather as well, if it's supposed to build a community together. It's just basically an apartment building that just got thrown down, and there's nothing that's drawing in the neighbors that are around. So that's my biggest concern, is how is this fitting? How is this going to draw in the neighbors that have been there and are established and been there for a long time? And like I said, all the other people said tonight, the traffic is awful too. I'm a teacher. I drive in the morning. I have to get to work, and it's horrible to get out of our subdivision. And driving home around like 5 o'clock, it's so bad. The congestion is so bad. And I've had to wait like about a half hour just to finally get to my street once because John R. gets so backed up. And if you think about it, all the people who are going to be exiting out of this apartment building off of Waddles, they're going to be turning into that left lane, trying to get over because it's just a 2-lane road. So they're going to be trying to get into that lane while other people are trying to still make a left onto John R. And it's going to cause a huge congestion problem. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I live in estates of Willowbrook, which is a lot of my fellow residents have brought up about the traffic study. I think the traffic study has to be revisited. And if you look at any online article, how they do traffic study, there are 3 ways of doing it. One, a manual counting. You go stand in a junction, look at the cars going between the junctions, keep a count of it. That's one way. Second way, you want to do it more data-driven. You attach a camera at the junction, look at the cars going different points of time. You have data over a period of time. You can extrapolate the data. Then you have your AI tools, which can generate the report. The third way is they put a small piece of a device in the street, and then it counts the number of times a device goes through, or an automobile goes through. So this traffic study that has come out, I'd like to know from you guys what method was used. Did you guys investigate and see what was the standard used for this method? So a simple thing would be we can attach a camera there, record it, give you the statistics and all that. But I think there's a traffic commission that needs to go through the proper study and so forth. And a lot of people have complained about the traffic congestion. One, you have to do it when the schools are active. Also, if you really look at the way the work culture is going on, more and more people are required to go to work. There's no more working from home, right? It's a hybrid mentality now. So the traffic is only going to go up. So somebody's got to account for that, come up with a projection, because once we build the flats and apartments, there's no way going back, right? I mean, it's just going to have that. So a traffic study has to be done very thorough, and that will be a key factor for us to do this. So I kindly request you guys to go back, do this traffic study, and also when the traffic study is done, I think it should be more transparent to the community that stays there. So we can come, be part of the study, understand how it's done, and then there's more transparency with how the report is generated. The second part I want to talk about is the drainage. Our house are about 6 years old. We still have, though it's newly built, there's a lot of drainage issues. We have called the city many times. City comes, takes a look and says it's a builder's issue. We call the builder says, no, it's a city issue. So a lot of the times the residents themselves have to fix it. And now with this additional thing coming, I don't know how good the drainage system is going to be. So again, the drainage system has to be it has to be shown in such a way that it's transparent to all of us. We can review and come back. So those are the two comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who wants to talk about this issue? Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to close the public comment portion and bring it back to the commission. I don't know, we can start the discussion, Mr. Buechner.
Mr. Carla, will you help us a little bit with the traffic? You're the expert in the room. I mean, not the expert, but you've got the background, and you can explain them maybe a little bit better.
I'm certainly not a traffic expert.
I know you're not the expert.
So when this first came to review by the city, the application was first submitted to the city. It goes through a full review by all the appropriate departments. This includes building, fire, planning, obviously, as well as engineering. At that time, engineering did not feel like it warranted a traffic study. The number of units didn't suffice, in their opinion, the need to complete a traffic study. It came to the Planning Commission. You, as a Planning Commission, discussed it, and the Planning Commission directed a traffic review to be done. There's a lot of levels for traffic analysis. There's the detailed traffic analysis as brought up by one of the residents, where you put cameras out there, you put columns out there, et cetera. The review done by the city didn't warrant that level of review based on the review by the traffic engineer and the consultant OHM. What they did was called a traffic memo. Essentially, there's a universally accepted methodology as well as a universally accepted numbers based on land uses in terms of what the traffic volume is. It's done by a professional organization called ITE. They take the ITE numbers and apply it to the land use code of what this is. Based on those numbers, those are the numbers that were generated. That's a generalized number based on land use and common conditions with regards to suburban setting, apartments type of review. The traffic study did not look at this particular site in terms of what the volume would be based on the specific conditions with this site. It was a generalized study based on ITE information, and based on those projected numbers, the traffic consultant felt that the amount of traffic generated was going to be nominal based on the total volume that Waddles and John R. handles. So it was a review based on accepted traffic numbers from the professional organization ITE based on the land use for this particular type of development and location.
Do they look at it not just yesterday, but through the school year and
those numbers are
evenings and winters and
those numbers are year-round numbers.
Okay.
And they're not specific based on when the year it is, whether or not school is in or out. They're generalized year-round numbers based on this land use. This number of traffic volume is expected to be generated at this particular site, and that's what it's calculated at.
Thank you. It was brought up a bunch of times. We're listening. I think everybody in the room is listening. My 2 cents from one person is we're all citizens here. The 9 of us are citizens, like most of us sitting here, and we get what you're feeling. I'll say that for me anyways. One thing I will say, I think we all agree that blight needs to be improved, and that's something I think everybody in the room will agree upon. So I thank the developers that come in and help that. But I do see that the site plan review design standards are staring at us in the face that it needs to be compatible to existing districts and provide a transition between land uses that enhance the character, environment, and safety for pedestrians and motorists. If I'm told to stick to that, this doesn't do it. So I will be voting no. But I think the people in the room need to realize that it's probably going to be developed someday. I think what I'm hearing is it needs to be less dense. That's not my call, but that's my 2 cents for one person.
Thank you. Mr. Faison.
So, Ben, I had a follow-up question on the traffic analysis. The question is, could there be a more specific analysis done given that the project doesn't exist? Like, how could they do counts and empirical tests like that? It seems like what was done was what was able to be done.
Yeah, I mean, there's no building there. There's no development there. So what they could do, if you're looking for a more precise traffic analysis, which takes time and is costs money to do, they could actually take more precise traffic numbers at that specific intersection, at the specific roadways, do counts of those, figure out what the total traffic volume is on that based on certain times of the day, and then they would apply these universal numbers. The universal numbers are not going to change. These are accepted numbers of what the traffic volume in and out is going to be based on. But they can apply a little more specifics into what that amount of traffic generated is going to be based on the existing conditions of the roadway during various times of the year, perhaps, or times of the day. But if you did, a more detailed analysis would take time, and the school's not in session right now, so it would be delayed, and I assume until the school would be in session. It would cost us a fairly significant amount of money to do that type of level of detail. I will tell you just from my experience, Mr. Faison, from a traffic engineer's perspective, even if you do a detailed analysis, my assumption is going to be that a 54-unit apartment complex really, compared to the volume of traffic on Wiles and John R., is not going to be a significant number of trips. From a traffic perspective, this type of use is one of the lower traffic volume producers compared to other land uses.
How many times have you gone to the right end?
So typically, a commercial development generates more traffic, an office building generates more traffic during those peak times because people come and go. And so in terms of just land use, this is a lower traffic volume generator that would then potentially could be there based on what the zoning allows. But again, to your question about traffic analysis, it was not a detailed analysis, it was just based on general traffic numbers based on the accepted practice.
The second part of your answer was my supposition as well, that you can analyze the baseline traffic on those roads, which would be very, very significant, and the 40-ish unit cars that go in and out at peak hours are going to have a very small impact on that. So just one follow-up question,
Yes,
if
of
I may.
course. Sure.
Could you speak quickly about the concern about water and drainage? I know we covered that in other site
Yeah,
plans.
so right now, water's not managed on the site. Water flows on the, drops on the site, and it can flow whatever the natural direction of flow. Obviously, grass is more pervious than asphalt or something of that nature. So you are going to be losing some pervious nature to the site just on developing it. That being said, as I said before, the site is not controlled from a stormwater management perspective. If this site does get developed, it will go through a full engineering review, which would ensure that any water that falls on the site stays on the site. And so there will be drainage around the perimeter, so they would trap any water that does fall on the site. So in essence, you're losing impervious or pervious area, but you're essentially improving it by actually having a controlled system, controlled stormwater, which doesn't exist currently.
Thank you.
Mr. Fox.
If you're going to boo me, at least let me get through the whole thought, and I'll let you know when I'm done. I guess two main comments. First off, I gather that I'm very popular in the room right now, so I figure I may as well talk a little bit about my background real quick, which at least explains my perspective when approaching these properties. And two, I want to comment on this specific build. First, a little bit of background on me and my living situation growing up. I lived in about 10 or 11 different homes before I turned 18. I was the first person in my family to be able to afford a home after getting a master's degree. And I was only able to achieve what I did because my family was able to afford to live in rental properties in communities with high quality school districts. These included Auburn Hills, Rochester Hills, Oxford, Orion, cities less dense than Troy, some cities as dense as Troy. So when I look at a build like this, I come at it from the perspective of what would have happened to me and my family if in those other communities, planning commissions had deemed those builds unfit for the nature of the community. I'm not sure what would have happened, who knows. My second thought is, I do feel like we, as it relates to the specific build, We, as a planning commission, kind of end up in this, I almost want to say, cyclical pattern when it comes to apartment complexes, specifically in the neighborhood nodes. I mean, in the 2 years since I've been here, we have had I can't remember the specific number, but multifamily projects that are built on neighborhood nodes. And the complaints about those multifamily projects, quite frankly, I think are identical from build to build. I cannot think of a single novel argument that has not come up from residents and concerned folks with every single Village of Hastings, privacy, traffic, the same exact arguments again and again and again. And if we as a planning commission were to take all of those comments at their face, we just would never approve anything. We just wouldn't. And I know we don't do that. We haven't done that in the past. We approved the Village of Hastings as an example that comes to mind. And so for me, this development, it fits what's in the ordinance. It's by right. The developer has met all of the requirements for parking, spacing. The developer has gone above and beyond. They have provided amenities for the residents when they didn't have to. They have provided fencing in between the neighboring properties when they did not have to. And at a point, we need to consider the larger context of, I guess to a point the residents were making, we need to consider the larger context of the direction that we see the city going. This fits in the neighborhood node, as far as I'm concerned. This property matches the ordinance, the intent of the neighborhood node, and I frankly don't know why we wouldn't approve it.
Thank you.
You may boo now if you would like.
Ms. Malala Holly.
I don't know what the commission is thinking in terms of the traffic issue that the residents brought in front of us. Traffic, I know, is an issue. I was against the Square Lake, Livernois and Square Lake PUD that came up because of the traffic, but after significant improvements that the developer made, listening to our concerns, not once, but 4 or 5 times that the gentleman was in front of us, I appreciate him, we were kind of A-okay to say, you have our approval, although we were not the granting body, it was the city council, but still. So traffic is something that I hear you. I'm not going to deny the left turn lane, the school buses, and now with this apartment complex, I know the school bus route, all of that is going to still be an issue. But I just want to point out, and kind of also borrowing thoughts from Mr. Fox here, Troy doesn't have much space for young people. And when I talk about young, I'm talking about single people. So if they are wanting to reside in Troy, and if they cannot buy a house, and house prices are going very, very high. I do not know how many of you read Wall Street Journal or New York Times or such kind of newspapers where they talk about real estate. The median income, median home price in cities like Troy has gone up, and now it is something in the range of $375,000 plus. These kind of developments, and being a by right development and fulfilling many of the requirements as stated, they are needed for people who want to live in such places because they like the city of Troy, but they cannot buy a house. Now, as Mr. Buechner said, we are all city residents. We all traverse the same roads as you do. Traffic is definitely an issue. I'm not going to deny. I've sat at 2 or 3 traffic lights, and I wonder why am I sitting here if I could get away with just sitting at 1. But those are the realities of the world that we live in. We all want to be in Troy for a reason. Many of us for school districts, some of us because this is the city we grew up in, some of us because we love the ethnicity and the diversity that the city offers. There are many reasons that we come up with. And I don't want us, you residents, us included, to kind of single-handedly say something no, when this could also have some meaningful impact on some of our young single people who want to live in Troy but cannot afford to live in Troy. Now, as an Indian immigrant to this country, I was not a person who could go ahead and buy a home when I moved to this country. The only place that I could think about living was a renting space like this, a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom renting space. and I'm sure many of you here who are probably from my country, India that is, agree with me that we all moved from that phase of life to a phase of life where we could buy and own a house. So I would like for you to kind of understand that when Planning Commission makes such decisions, it is not based on just elements that we want to single-handedly not approve, but elements that we have to consider because Troy is a city for all, not for a few or not for many, but for all. So this development, I know the developer has come before us and he has agreed to lower the height. He's given us a different plan, although not all buildings do we like in the city of Troy. Let's face it, not all buildings are attractive. We all know that. We want to make it attractive. We want to make it more modern, absolutely. And he has come up with some different renditions, and there is some outdoor space. Not all spaces, not all communities can be created with a lot of outdoor space also. Sometimes those restrictions do exist. But keeping an open mind about these kind of projects is very important for us on the Planning Commission. And for that reason, and being a by right project that it is, I think it's going to have a yes vote from me today.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman?
We're not taking public comment anymore. That's closed. Anyone over here? Mr. Cram?
Yeah, I just got a quick question for Ben. This is a neighborhood node designation. Is the housing part of that fit under the multifamily residential, or what's the designation for homes, in a neighborhood node, or this specific neighborhood node?
I guess I don't understand the
Okay,
question.
so we have ordinances for multifamily residential, and we have neighborhood nodes talking about homes. What category of housing?
This would qualify as a multifamily housing.
Multifamily, thanks. That's what I needed. Okay, so that said, the follow-up question, I know you go over the drawings carefully. One of the ordinance requirements for multifamily is that there's a common recreation area which is equivalent to 450 square feet per dwelling unit. Did we meet that requirement?
Is that in, what section of the ordinance is that in?
That would be Article 4. It says under D.
Yeah, so that's a different section of the ordinance that we reviewed under. That's under the multifamily zoning designation. This is a multifamily building, but it's in the neighborhood node section of the ordinance, which is Article 5. So the provisions of Article 4 do not apply.
Not apply,
Yeah.
okay, thanks.
So,
And then the next thing I wanted to talk about is does our ordinance from 2023 apply to this, or is it, does our master plan of 2023 apply?
the master plan has been adopted.
The new one?
The new one's been adopted, and the master plan applies. We're going through ordinance amendments, which we have not done. So the ordinance amendments that we're discussing do not apply. This is under the current, we review this under the current ordinance right now.
Okay, so that said, under the master plan, and I probably don't have the latest, then I have the 2023 version for this intersection. Is the wording, does it include in that wording, the new wording? I guess you got to look it up. I couldn't find it.
I can remember a lot, but I can't remember.
I don't blame you. No, I don't blame you. I understand. But I went to the website to look up, right off of the planning department, the master plan, and it came up with the 2023. So maybe it hasn't been updated yet, because it just was approved, within the last month? Yeah. But anyway, getting to the point, it says for the John R., this is on the 2023, and if it's different, let me know. The John R. Road and Waddles node, it said should focus on mixed use, service or commercial uses to serve the immediate neighborhoods. So I don't know if this development qualifies for serving the immediate neighborhood, but hopefully the Rite Aid will be redeveloped and can again serve the immediate neighborhood. It says any development or redevelopment shall be of a scale and massing to complement the existing low-scale nature of the area. And these are buildings that are lower than what's allowed in the adjoining residential areas. Low-scale multiple family may be permissible if it models the scale and orientation of the multiple family neighborhood at the northeast corner of the node, and that's the enclave. So I'm trying, what's nice about the enclave, and there may not be enough space on this 2 acres to do it, but they had homes that were connected with more of a winding road. I realize there's no winding, we can't fit a winding road in here, but I'm just trying to envision how it can take on the similar scale or model, says scale and orientation of the development directly north of this. So I'm kind of up in the air yet. It meets, obviously it's a by right, so the developer comes in. We have no, we can't tell the developer he has to have peaked roofs or flat roofs. That's his prerogative to do that. So I'm just trying to weigh, okay, does it fit the ordinances and the master plan, or maybe it doesn't. It's kind of like it's getting very subjective as far as if it meets it or not. The last point I want to make is I read through all of the comments, all the emails that residents sent in, and one in particular was from Pete Wilkins. He had a solution which I thought was rather excellent. He took one of the site plan and he superimposed on it one of the enclave buildings, and he superimposed another apartment building from Big Beaver, I believe in John R., and he placed it on there, and he left some wooded area too. I thought it was an excellent solution, and thank you for doing that. Although, even though it's an excellent solution, and the developer, it's his land, it's not yours, he can do what he wants. So I'm kind of in a quandary. I haven't really decided mentally, is it a go or no go, but I'll let the other commissioners have their word.
Thank you. Yep, Mr. Faison.
A question for Mr. Motzni. If there's conflict between the master plan and the ordinance, what do we base our decision criteria on?
This board should base its decision on the ordinance. The master plan is merely a guide to help interpret the ordinance, but it has to be based on the ordinance.
And when we say it's a by right development, my understanding is that means it complies with the ordinance.
The way I would describe it is if this board was to choose to deny the site plan, it would have to be able to point to a specific provision of the ordinance that has not been complied with.
Thank you.
I'll say a few things. You know, I'll start broad. I mean, a couple of the takeaways that I took from the comments are two things, and one of them is actually something we talked in our pre-meeting about today, and that is ultimately I think the city has to take a look at, I'd really be interested to know how many apartments we've approved in the last, let's say, 5 years, just so we all have a better understanding of where we're at, because we've actually received many apartment applications in the last several years, and it would be nice to get a gauge on where we're at with that. And then the other thing is I think we should look at the future traffic study methodology, because I've had issues with it for years when I was a citizen and now, and you know, we did ask for a traffic study, but we didn't really even know what we were asking for, and we got what we got, and now we know a little bit more about the traffic studies that we could have asked for. And of course, there's a cost with them, but maybe we should be reviewing that as a city as well. When it comes to this particular project, you know, I looked at there were a lot of points made in that survey, or where you got the signatures, and I understand all of the concerns, but one thing that I want to stress is that it's not an option. You know, we can't be looking at it as what it is now to what this proposal is, because the developer owns the land and is entitled to build on it. So when we talk about the fact that we're going to tear down trees, whatever goes there is going to eliminate trees. Privacy loss, it's the same, it's all of the concerns are there no matter what goes there. And so our job as planning commissioners is to make sure that we're good neighbors and that the transition rules are adhered to, so that way we're being kind to the neighbors. And it's also hard because it's a neighborhood node, and so we know that we're trying to, you guys read us parts of the master plan, which we're very familiar with, but on the flip side, you guys are also asking for a fence, a really solid fence to, you're saying, well, what's there for me? But build a fence because we don't want, so it's a little bit difficult because we're trying to please everybody and we're trying to be good neighbors, but also offer something to the community. Personally, I believe that I'm having a hard time finding anything where it does not, I can't point to anything where it would not adhere to the zoning ordinance. And to the developer, I would say, I personally really like the building. I think it's beautiful. I like the modern look. So I don't have an issue with that. But I do have a couple questions for the applicant. Maybe you can step up. I wanted to ask if you could just address a couple of things. One would be the snow removal. Do you guys have a plan for that? So you still are meeting the parking requirement?
Absolutely. So we have a large green belt, which almost everybody puts the snow in the green belt area. So there's adequate area that's outside the limits of the parking lot for snow.
Okay.
And when that, very few cases where you can't accomplish it, we actually haul it away. Okay. It's not done very often, but that's an answer, that's how we have to deal with it on other properties. So it's not the first time that, it would come up where you get to the point, because we don't want to lose parking. We can't lose parking.
Right. Okay, thank you. And then the one other question would be the question of the fence. I know there was a picture of it, and it was wood, and I think that there were holes, not holes, spaces. So
no, actually, what that shows is one piece of wood is on one side, and then the other piece is on the. It's alternating. It's just so it's still solid, but it's alternating. So that way, no one neighbor is looking at just the frame. So one side sees the same as the other,
okay.
Just alternating boards.
So in other words, if there were a car parked up to the fence, no light is getting through?
No.
Okay.
No, because the alternating pieces actually have a small overlap. So if you were to walk up to the fence and look sideways because there's about 1.5 inch gap, you might see a sliver, but you'd have to actually be your head up against the fence and looking, because there's 1.5 inch wide 2x4 framing, and then one board gets screwed or nailed to one side and the other one's on the other side. So
Okay.
no lights can go through.
And out of curiosity, I'm not asking for it, I'm just, if the neighbor, we're not asking the neighbors again, but I think a few of them asked for a stone fence, a brick wall, or taller. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I specifically asked what kind of fence at the last meeting, and I was told, we want a fence. You propose what you want to use. And then I said, okay, that's great. What's the height? Mm-hmm. And I was specifically, I don't remember who made the comment, 6 feet high. And I said, I thought 4 or 5 foot. If you want 6, there's a 6 foot high fence.
Okay, understood. Thank you, I appreciate that. Does anyone else have a question for the applement since I asked them to come up?
May I ask a quick question?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
I was going to request a moment or two just to respond. And first of all, I want to thank besides the commission, I want to thank all the neighbors who left their house, left their kids at home, came here, gave their opinions. I actually like to hear other people's opinions. I don't always have to agree, but I at least like to hear them. And if I can address them, sometimes I can. And like the fence, I had no intention of putting a fence. I think it's a negative, but I want to show good faith to the neighbors. So thank you to everybody for coming. It seems like we do have some traffic problems in the city. It's obvious because I haven't done anything yet, and we have problems on certain intersections. And when you can answer it any way you want, but when you have an existing problem and you increase it by a fraction of a percentage, you can't blame one particular small project and say that I'm going to make it that much worse. It just, the math doesn't work, whether you have a full study and you spent thousands of dollars or whether you had, there's people that work in the city that are way smarter than I am. And if they would have thought that it was an issue, they would, believe me, they would have brought it to the table. And some people don't like the architecture. You know, I happen to like it a lot, but it's not just liking it. The lower profile to me is important because a pitched roof, not only does it look, you know, you've seen them over and over again, but it does increase the massing, and I just think it's important. So I don't believe there's any part of the ordinance that we didn't meet. I understand that there's a few areas that are subjective, and one of the comments was, you know, mixed use. Well, it is mixed use because it's a part of a site that has commercial, and it's not just all residential because it's one common mixed use site. So I just want to say that we didn't just artificially create something and was called greedy. You know, we're trying to do something that makes economic sense, because if it fails, then it does become blight. So you want something that's going to be successful, because just like it costs so much money to build a house and people can't afford homes, these are also expensive projects, so they have to make sense. Maybe there would have been some other things that we like to do, but the renters have a budget just like everybody else, just like you have and I have. So it has to make economic sense. It has to be, this is not just going to be here when it's built, it's going to be here 30 years from now. Just like the center that I built pretty much 40 years ago. And it has to last, and it has to be something that makes economic sense. I don't know who's going to come to the Rite Aid space, but hopefully it'll be a good tenant that helps the neighborhood, and it gives people, you know, more opportunities to stay and want to be in the city. And I can't say it any better than you said it. We want to create opportunities for other people. The kids that you want, that you're worried about walking to school, we want more kids walking to school with your kids. They're not different or strange. It's all together. Just because one might live in an apartment and one might live in a home doesn't mean they don't walk to school together and have the same experiences and have the same goals. So we think we have a great project. We have rights too. We just want what's, I'm not going to say just the right. I mean, we actually want the right to create more opportunities for the city, and we think we did a good job presenting it, so we would appreciate an affirmative vote because we think we have a good project.
Thank you.
Sorry that I stopped you from.
Do you have questions for the applicant, or should we have them sit down?
Just one quick question. You may not be able to answer this question, but I just out of curiosity asked because your apartment complex that you're proposing is in close proximity to elementary school, middle school, and also high school. Will there be any impact well, not a correct word here, school bus routes? Do you know by any chance whether school buses will be plying inside the apartment complex? Any such kind of idea?
I can't answer that because I don't know how they plan that. I know that in some commercial projects, buses stop in certain parking lots. It's typically early in the morning and there's no other vehicles. I don't know if that's planned by anybody at that level of who operates the transportation portion of the schools.
We can answer that question. We know.
We're not taking comments from the audience, sorry.
He's asking the developer about an issue that he doesn't know.
Yeah.
It's not a conversation, I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Krant?
Since you're up here, and you did the economics to make this whole thing work, I'm sure, what is the price point for these rentals?
We actually haven't set the exact price point.
Close enough. You had to do your due diligence on the economics.
The ones that we, like I said, I don't own them. I was the general contractor. Recently completed in Big Beaver. They range by the square foot they're not all the same square foot, per unit. It's somewhere in the $2 to $2.25 range
Okay,
per square foot.
To put it into common street language, how much would that be to rent an apartment, let's say for a two-bedroom?
Do you know what the square footage is?
Call it like 850 square.
If it was an 800 square foot unit at $2, it would be 1,600. At 2 1/4, it would be closer to 2,000 maybe.
That gives me an idea, thanks.
Something like that.
Yep, Mr. Lambert?
One quick question. One young lady was talking about the beauty salon. Do you have any ownership interest in that?
In the building, we had a tenant there that, moved out years ago and it's been vacant. So whether we have one large tenant that would take more of the building or whether we end up dividing it into smaller tenants, all those options are being studied.
Can I ask, are you anticipating any improvements to the buildings to
Well,
attract tenants?
I'm sure that any tenant that comes in will say Rite Aid didn't, at the time, they don't require a lot of glass. Now, not only does the ordinance require it, but a lot of tenants want more glass. So I'm sure there's going to be some glazing on the Wattle side. I'm sure there's going to be a facade improvement. I'm sure there's going to be, the paving is almost at its useful life, so it's going to have to be redone. And I'm sure there'll be landscape improvements, but.
So you're waiting for the tenant as opposed to improving the building first and then trying to lease it?
Well, again, we hope to find a tenant, but sometimes if there's nobody out there, we might make a decision to, hey, let's chop it up into smaller stores and maybe have a better chance to lease it that way. But you always hope for a larger tenant that has, you think the corporations are going to be long-lasting. They were there for many years, but they go bankrupt too. So it's just part of the business, unfortunately.
Okay.
But again, thank you to everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Mr. Hudson?
The members of this commission know I'm a man of few words, and I'm going to stick to that. First of all, no one has discussed tonight, although we've had several sessions on the subterranean basement issue. I think it's a safety issue. And I think some of you agreed with me that half an apartment below grade is not a good thing to have with people wandering around. Secondly, while the node is a roadmap, it's an important roadmap. And I agree with several members of this audience who have said, I think this project lacks a majority of the ideas set forth in this node. Thirdly, it's been suggested that in this site plan, an abandoned drugstore is going to be a recreational opportunity for all the tenants. I doubt that. As you can sense with my few words, I don't like this project.
Thank you. Mr. Cagle.
I guess a couple of things I'd like to talk about that were brought up tonight. One is the privacy, one is safety, and the other is the fence thing. I'll leave the fence till last. I deal with people all the time, every day, that are trying to understand two-dimensional and three-dimensional drawings, and they have a hard time doing that. In the privacy issue, with regard to this complex, if you look at, I'm looking at 3 properties that back up to the ends of the two buildings. 2 other properties that abut it to the south, their ends abut the long dimension of the building. So the privacy issue to me I'm going to guess, I don't have a measurement, but I'm going to guess it's at least 100 feet from the back of the single-family residence to the ends of the buildings. I know that the pavement is 60 feet. So I'm guessing that just by the drawing I'm looking at, there's probably another 30 to 40 feet to the back of the residence. So the whole privacy thing, I find really it's a perception thing. Well, those properties look now onto an unbuilt green space. and they're trying to perceive and understand what a building with less height than the homes that they live in is going to be a privacy issue to them. Now, I understand there are trees buffering, they're deciduous trees, so there are going to be times of the year where there's leaves not going to be on the trees. But I tell you what, I would ask you to measure the distance between home A and home B, and you don't have 100 feet. Measure the distance from across the street from one house to the other. It may be 100 feet. So it's the whole perception of, okay, we're going to take a green space, we're going to put a building on it, or 2 buildings on it. So it's that perception that I think people have a hard time really, in their mind's eye, understanding what that's going to be. The other thing I want to talk about is safety. We've heard a lot about safety, a lot about the traffic. There have been studies done. If you take a street, a residential street, and you put no parking on it, cars are going to go faster than if you put parking on one side. You put parking on 2 sides of the street, traffic even slows down more. So my point is, with the amount of traffic that everybody says is at this intersection, traffic is not going to be going at high rates of speed where children may be at danger or traffic accidents may occur. Somebody cited the number of accidents at this intersection over, I think it was a 4-year period. I would question, what were those accidents all about? How many, what caused those accidents? Was it inclement weather? Was it drivers that are, what time of day was it? How heavy was the traffic? I would really wonder at the peak hours how many accidents really occurred in this area, as with most. So again, the safety thing, I think what we need to consider as well, if there is a lot of traffic, traffic's not going to be moving very fast. Children today, unfortunately, we live in Detroit. It's the Motor City. There's cars everywhere. Children have to understand that you got to look for that kind of stuff. You got to be careful. And it's really the individual drivers that we really, not the developer. I mean, again, I get it. There could be different ways to study the impact of the 40 trips in the morning or 30 trips in the evening. But quite honestly, when you take that under a 60-minute or whatever that time frame was, that's a very, very small impact on the roads. And then lastly, I said something about the fence. What the developer is proposing is a fence that's going to have posts, maybe 6 foot on center. They can easily put those posts in the ground and not really affect the root structure of any of the trees that may be close to it. If you require them to put a solid wall in, they're going to have to dig a solid foundation and are very likely going to kill the root ball of those trees, and you're going to lose some of, if not more, trees. So I just think, if we look at this a little bit differently, I think, and yeah, I get it. I don't want this in my backyard. But quite honestly, the property is there, the developer has purchased it, he's adhering to the zoning ordinances, and so I'm going to be voting favorably for this project.
Mr. Fox? Thank you.
Yeah. On the topic of the subterranean apartments, because it is a very important aspect of this bill that we should discuss to some length. So right now I have a finished basement on my home. I haven't had any flooding issues since I moved in. I've lived in these kind of subterranean apartments. It's effectively like living in a finished basement, but with bigger windows in some instances. So yeah, for me, that's why like the subterranean hasn't really been flicking a lot of flags for me, because I've seen them before, I've lived in them. It's not necessarily a huge concern on my end.
Anyone else? Mr. Faison?
Are you ready for a resolution?
If we're ready. I think everyone has given an opinion. Mr. Lambert, did you?
I was going to wait until the resolution gets proposed, so.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Faison, if you're.
Resolved that preliminary site plan approval pursuant to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed Waddle Square apartments located on the south side of Waddles, east of John R., Section 24, Zone NN, Neighborhood Node F, zoning district, be granted.
Second.
Okay. Seconded by Mr. Fox. Mr. Lambert, would you like to
Yeah.
say something?
Government moves slow, I'm sure, unless it comes to raising your taxes, government moves slow. So we've been dealing with neighborhood nodes going on for nearly 3 or 4 years here on the commission, and city council has also been dealing with it. You are not the only citizens in the city who've been frustrated with the neighborhood node situation. We just adopted earlier this year changes to the master plan, and based upon the information for this intersection, this development probably does not fit. But unfortunately, for you as neighbors, the ordinance has not been updated yet to reflect the changes to the neighborhood nodes for this intersection. So the developer has met the ordinance, and we really have no choice, at least in my situation, to vote no on it. I'd have to vote yes just based upon the ordinance language.
Thank you. Mr. Krant?
Yeah, I'll just give a reflection of what Mr. Lambert said. It does meet, I can't find anything, let's put it this way, I can't find anything in the ordinance that is not, this development doesn't comply with. So in that case, if I were to vote no against this, and we had a majority no's, the developer would have the right to sue the city because it has met everything and he does own the property. So if it meets all the ordinances and he owns the property, he has the right, that's what they call it, his by right to build exactly what he's proposed. So I'm going to have to vote in approval of the motion.
Any further discussion? All right, I think we're ready for the roll call.
Mr. Hudson?
No.
Mr. Krant?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Biegner?
No.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone who came out tonight. I'm just going to wait a minute for the people to leave. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, take care.
So we still have 2 items left. We're going to jump back because we reordered the agenda, so we're now on what used to be called item 5, the special use and preliminary site plan review, SU JPLN 2024-003. It's the proposed Starbucks with the drive-through north side of Big Beaver, west of John R., 1735 East Big Beaver, Section 23, and it's currently zoned Community Business Zoning District. I'll turn it over to Mr. Carlisle.
Thank you. Again, this is a project that's been in front of the Planning Commission. I think this is the 3rd time, maybe more even. The applicant is proposing to relocate the existing Starbucks that's in the Troy Sports Center complex to the Chase Bank Outlot site. Coffee shops are permitted use in the zoning district. However, drive-throughs do require special use. And the site plan and special use approval would transfer Starbucks, in our opinion, to a more visible location along East Big Beaver and allow for the utilization of an existing drive-through use at the former Chase building. So this picture's a little washed out, but essentially, oh, she stole my, Mr. Butler. Thank you. So just for background, the existing Starbucks is located here in this part of the building. They're relocated to the Chase building, which is vacant, located at this particular location. So they're reusing existing drive-through use. On May 14th, the Planning Commission continued the matter for the following reasons. One is to discuss Troy Sports Center circulation improvements in total, the dumpster location, landscaping, photometrics, and pedestrian improvements. At the Planning Commission meeting, I believe it was last meeting or the meeting before that, you had a lengthy discussion with regards to the proposed improvements to the circulation. What they have done based on your direction is done 3 things. One is they extended the curb bump out. This now eliminates traffic coming directly through and they funnels traffic to where they made their second improvement where they actually put a cut through here to allow for traffic to not have to go through the entire site but cut through right to the main drive aisle for the center. And then the third thing they did is they have reconstructed the location of the Starbucks drive-through so it's directly accessed off of the main drive aisle and not through the parking lot. So those are the three improvements that were made to the circulation. This was studied and discussed at great length, and I think there was consensus from the Planning Commission that this was not a perfect solution, but a step in the right direction compared to what's there today. The other site improvements that they've made since the last time the Planning Commission has seen this is they reoriented the dumpster. There was the concern about the dumpster location. It was really facing kind of almost a 90-degree tilt the other way, much more visible location. So they've actually reoriented to be a little better screened than what they had previously proposed. They've added trees along the periphery of the parking lot to comply with the tree requirements. And lastly, they have extended crosswalks across the entire drive aisles to provide better pedestrian circulation as well. There are 7 standards the Planning Commission should consider with regards to special use. The Planning Commission is very aware of these standards. And similar to the last project, there are 3 site plan standards the Planning Commission should consider. So we do support the relocation of Starbucks. It would provide a more visible location and reutilize the existing building. However, we do advise that the Planning Commission consider compliance with the special use standards as well as compliance with site plan review standards. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Carlisle before we bring the applicant up? Mr. Lambert?
Do we still need to address the photometrics for this
Yeah,
plan?
thank you for reminding me. The applicant did send photometrics today. I have not had a chance, did not review them, have a chance to review them. So I would just suggest that if this moves forward with a motion, the motion should just simply say that photometrics compliance will be reviewed as part of the site plan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, why don't we have the applicant come up? And thank you for your patience.
Absolutely.
And I apologize that we bumped you down the agenda, but I hope you understand.
I understand.
Okay.
Jim Butler with PEA Group, address is 1849 Pond Run, Auburn Hills 48326. As you recall, last time we were in front of you, I think Mr. Carlisle did a really good job explaining the changes that we have made. I think they're all really good suggestions. I think we've addressed every concern that you've had. If there's any further concerns you have, I'm certainly willing to discuss them and talk to you about them, but would ask for your approval.
Thank you. Yep, Mr. Buechner.
I like the changes for one person. How many trees did we add?
I believe it was 5 or 6.
I think there were 6 trees that we had added.
Okay.
Yep, to meet the requirements.
I like what I see so far.
Thank you.
Yep, Mr. Lambert.
I don't want to steal Mr. Tagle's thunder, but to ask this question at the last meeting when we discussed this, he suggested rerouting traffic up and not doing that immediate left turn there. Are you guys unalterably opposed to his suggestion?
We've made the modification pursuant to what Mr. Tagle had requested. What there was, and there's always, as you know, we've talked about this several times. We've talked about putting a bump out there to channelize traffic. But the issue was, and it's pretty obvious, you really start thinking about it. You have the one-way traffic coming to the drive-through. We had two-way traffic coming out the other way. So there's 3 traffic patterns there. To avoid that conflict, we've completely eliminated that drive on the north. So now traffic would, either they come in the front parking field and park, or they go all the way to the back, put into that new cut through and use the parking field there. And there are pedestrian crossings defined by signage and striping that they can get to the crosswalks and the sidewalks.
Because when I look at that diagram there, it looks like there's an immediate left turn, so.
That's just for the drive-through.
Oh, okay.
Only. If you go, do we have the overall, Ben? Yeah, this kind of defines it a little bit better. You can see the drive-through to the north side of the building, and then any traffic that's only drive-through only. If anyone wants to access the parking field, they'll continue to the north, make a left turn into that northerly parking field.
Thank you.
Mr. Lambert, and the city will work with the applicant in terms of appropriate signage to make sure that it's notified that's drive-through access only, et cetera. So there will be some internal directional signs that will be accompanying this as well.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Of course.
Mr. Fox.
I'm a big fan of breaking up kind of that straight line with the extended curb you've got at point number 1. I was curious, is the intention that there'd be like trees on there? I'm curious, like what kind of visibility is there to like signify like do not drive over this?
Well, we have raised curb, of course, on both sides. And then we have landscaping, low-level landscaping within that island.
I like, so like shrubs and
Shrubberies,
like,
yep.
I like that. Cool.
Yep, Mr. Kron.
I think the improvement's great.
Thank you.
I like how where that intersection where number 3 is, it's no longer a 4-way intersection. So you got my approval.
Thank you, Mr. Kraft.
I mean, I'll quickly say, I think you improved the circulation. I'm glad you closed that entrance by the drive-through. I like even how you pivoted the dumpster orientation.
I listened, I listened. And that was just purely because if I had it the other way, we couldn't access it.
Oh, really? Okay.
But no, I really moved it for you.
No, I mean, we didn't come up with that, so I like that. I was going to ask about the landscaping of the bump out, but it looks like you're taking care of that. The only question is the handicap parking. It just seemed far and going across the drive-through as opposed to maybe being there. I mean, I don't know what the rules and regulations, but I'm just throwing it out there. If that's the most appropriate spot for that, is that the closest? If you go south, you're not crossing that drive-through.
Well, I think the challenge that we had with that is surely related to grades. The existing grade of the parking lot is steeper than what ADA would require.
Oh, got
We're
it.
adjusting the grades on this side so
Okay.
we can able to make it flatter. If we didn't do that, we'd have to adjust the grades pretty significantly.
Okay, okay.
So that's why we did that.
And that's like, and I'm assuming it meets the standards for ADA for distance?
It meets it for the number A and its slope rating.
Ms. Rex, there's also, it can't see it here, there's also handicap parking in this location too, so.
Oh, okay.
So if you can't park here for some reason, you can park here and go walk this distance.
Okay, okay.
Good point.
Did anyone else have any questions or comments for the applicant?
What are the, I just have a quick question. Behind the handicap parking space, what is those 2 squares that I see? One at number 3 and one right on top there. What are those 2 squares for?
The squares that are there?
Yeah.
Those are the storm sewer, around the storm sewer structures.
Oh.
We put concrete in, called concrete collars to support them.
Nice. Okay. Thank you.
Yep,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
All right, I'll open it to discussion, or if anyone wants to pass, propose a
Do
resolution.
you want public?
Oh, yeah, I mean, this isn't a public hearing, but if anyone's here from the public and wants to make a comment on this issue. Okay, seeing no one, we'll turn it back to the Planning Commission. Mr. Lambert?
I was going to make a resolution unless somebody wants to interject. So.
I will allow you, please.
Resolved that special use approval and preliminary site plan approval for the proposed Starbucks with drive-through north side of Big Beaver, west of John R. at 1735 East Big Beaver, Section 23, currently zoned CB, Community Business District B, granted, subject to the following condition, the submittal of a photometric plan for approval by city staff. Is that okay, Mr. Carlisle?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, I think we're ready for the roll call.
Mr. Krant?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Biegner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, did you want something on?
No, thank you.
Oh,
I just
okay.
want to say thank you for your time and your consideration. I know it took a long time, but I think we ended up with a good result.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you
you.
for coming to the last meeting for
Of
that
course,
discussion.
I thought it was very
'cause
beneficial to
Yeah, I
us.
thought it helped as well.
Yes, thank you.
And sorry we made you wait for
No.
such a short, okay. Okay, we're going to move on to item, what was previously item 6. The preliminary site plan approval, JPLN 2023-0028, proposed John R. Commons Townhome Development, west side of John R., north of Big Beaver, PIN 88-20-23-476-017, Section 23, zoned multifamily residential zoning district. I'll turn it back over to Mr.
Thank you.
Carlisle.
I wish Mr. Bell was here. You don't ever have to apologize to consultants, developers, consultants, so. He gets paid either way. True. So The last item tonight is proposed townhomes at John R. Again, another product been in front of the Planning Commission numerous times. An application's been submitted for a multifamily building located on the east side of John R., just north of Big Beaver. The site is approximately 12 acres. It's currently vacant. It is used as stormwater detention. The site is one parcel, and there's no existing structures on site. For background, the applicant proposes 118 units. They're in 20 different buildings around the site. This is a permitted use in the multifamily district, and access to the site is via Nancy Bostic Drive, which is that short public road right off John R., as well as there's a cross-access here with Troy Sports Complex, which we've spent a lot of time discussing and fits into the overall site improvements to the Troy Sports Complex. On May 14th, the Planning Commission last reviewed the project and postponed action to allow for the sports center circulation improvements, which we discussed earlier, as well as to reevaluate the architectural design. I'm not going to go over this in any sort of detail, but again, this is the larger diagram of the entire traffic movement of the entire site. And these are the changes to the elevation. So I just want to be very clear. The top elevation is the revised elevation. The bottom elevation is the previous reviewed elevation. So you can see there's some detail here on the roof lines compared to what was there before. There's some change to some dormers here on top of these roofs. But again, I don't think there was, I wouldn't say significant architectural change from what you last reviewed. That's building A. Building B, some changes to some color schemes, some changes to some coverings over the roof, some additional detail here on the top of these peaked roofs. But again, not, I don't think significant architectural changes from what you last reviewed. Site plan review standards apply, the three that we have discussed previously. And so lastly, we're asking the Planning Commission to review the standards and confirm if they've been met. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Carlisle?
Just one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to make sure. So this one is definitely multi-family residential district? Thank you.
So we're reviewing it under Article 4.
Got it. Thank you.
That wasn't a question, no? Okay. We'll invite the applicant up.
Good evening. Greg Bono with PEA Group, 1849 Pond Run, Auburn Hills. Pleasure to be here. I think we were really close last time. We had the two items there, circulation. I think Mr. Butler kind of paved the way for us on that one. Architect Brian Nieper's here to answer any further questions you might have with regards to some of the architectural enhancements that he made in this last submittal, and I'm happy to answer any other questions you guys have.
All right. This is your opportunity to ask the applicant any questions about the architecture. Yep, Mr. Lambert.
I like everything that you've done. I still have concerns about that western access point. I would prefer to see it as an EVA, but I can't speak for the majority of my colleagues here. You guys are pretty much wedded to having full vehicular access through that western access point?
I mean, in a lot of ways, yes. I mean, we're not necessarily going to say if it's a matter of approval or not that we would, be opposed to it. But we just do feel strongly that the additional access point helps distribute the traffic in maybe a little bit more of a uniform way. And we could discuss if that is the case. Some of the adverse effects that it might force onto Nancy Bostic and potentially across the frontage of the existing Kroger. So from that standpoint, we kind of feel that full access is desirable there. I guess that's.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else have questions for the applicant?
I've got one.
Go ahead, Mr. Crum.
Referring to the ordinance for multifamily residential under the Section D supplemental district standards and number 5 recreation space, It says all multifamily development in the multifamily district shall contain an area or areas providing a common recreation, which is equivalent to 450 square feet per dwelling unit. Did we meet that?
Yeah, I believe if it's in our site plan data table, if we have it, I believe we did a calculation of open space area with all the different amenity spaces, the pathways, and the green space. I mean, in and around the detention area. I apologize, I don't have it in front of me.
Numbers, okay.
Yeah, I'm certain we
Well, I'm sure the city will
exceeded
check
that.
on that before they grant any kind of permits.
Sure.
Is that the case, Ben?
Yeah, and we did actually look at this and spent some time discussing this. I remember we spent a lot of time discussing this provision in previous reviews, so we just spent some time looking at, when we look at this, Mr. Krant, we look at everything from the trails around the pond. They have a dog park here. They added open space patios in these locations. So we account for all of that to count towards the space. So yeah, it does. We did check the numbers. We'll double check the numbers as part of the final site plan. And yeah, we do think it meets that requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Malala Holly?
I do not know whether I was here the last time your application was in front of the Planning Commission. What was the general discussion about the dry detention spot that you have? This area in the front? I'm calling it the front, but
in
it's not
terms
exactly.
of,
We talked about, I know this was mentioned, there was a trail, a walking path, the dogs, things like that we had wanted you to consider. We know it's very dry and brown right now. I totally get that, and it's not a nice, lively green space there to put benches or things around. But how would we beautify this space? Because this is right on John R., and as you're passing it, you don't want to see a brown area. So we talked about some shrubs, things like that are climate friendly.
yeah, I think I maybe led us astray on this on my original aerial. I don't know what time of year that was taken, but I think if you drive by there now, there's, I would hesitate to call it wetlands, but there's like plants in there. It's not a mowed grass thing. So in terms of, and I think you guys had recommended planting something that could withstand some level of water, during wetter periods whenever there's, water accumulating because it's a detention stormwater area. And I think that's actually kind of what is there now.
No beautification plans for that, no trail, no
We
pathway?
had, I think we had the pathway originally there, but we added some additional benches. And we added a boulder retaining wall. So when you see the development from John R., through the vegetation, maybe you'll see we put a nice landscape boulder wall across there to kind of enhance the character. And then we also added some lower level landscape bushes and things like that above the retaining wall, between the retaining wall and the edge of the curb. So,
Ms. Mahal, if you look at page 59 of the packet, or landscape plan, it shows the improvements that were noted by Mr. Bono. And there is actually a path or trail that runs on the north side of the pond to the John R. sidewalk, as well as landscape
I see
improvements,
it.
border wall, et cetera.
I see that, yes. Thank you, Mr. Carlisle, and thank you.
Yep. Mr. Tagle?
With the additional impervious areas, how often do you think that pond will be wet? Because right now, it's all pervious, the site, but you're adding a lot of impervious area, and I assume you're draining everything into that pond. Do you think it's going to be wet most of the year because of the additional runoff?
I think we're kind of carving out a little bit more of the bank to kind of enlarge it slightly. I think it's probably going to be relatively the same. I mean, it might fill up slightly higher, but the allowable discharge rate is still the same. So we'll be discharging water over a period of 48 hours. So regardless of whether it fills up to here or there is dictated by the rain event itself. But it should de-water within 48 hours. You know, it's kind of also what you would call like a backup system where the commercial development, the water backs up into it and comes out, and there's a pump station down there. So if it stays wetter for longer periods, it might be an indication that there might need to be some other maintenance on the system that
I was
might need
hoping
to
there would be some water in there, just not, along with the boulders, along with the landscaping, just some other elements, So, I have another question.
Yeah, go ahead, of course.
On your elevations, on elevation type B, it looks like there's a combination of siding and brick.
Correct.
And does that brick on two of the fronts actually go all the way up to the peak?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was a nice add to those elevations to help, delineate with some different materials. Let me go back to elevation A. Oops. So elevation A, you cap the brick at a sill line about the roofs. Okay.
Yeah, we just try to add a little bit more character to the units and just
more
so you
detail.
differentiate the units a bit more.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for the applicant? I have a question. These are, remind me, these are rentals? They're like, this is a whole condo thing, or we're selling these units?
I don't know that that's been determined yet, no. The way they're constructed, they could be sold as condos or rented as apartments,
Oh, I see, okay. But either way, they're going to, if they're condos, the owner's going to maintain the common areas, or the association, or?
Yes. If they were condos, it would be maintained by an association. If it's apartments, it's the property owner, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
One other question. I was looking at your aerial 3D looking to the west. In the first the first building group that's closest to Nancy Bostic Drive, as you turn in and you're looking at the end of the elevation, and I think it would really help if you put some significant landscaping there just to take away the blankness and the flatness of that wall. Because right next to it, you've got the articulation of the long facade. I don't know if, Ben, it's on page 91, if you can scroll to that.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I was just curious which building number that was.
I can't tell you.
I would have zero objection to that.
Yeah. I think it would just help soften, because that's like the front door. I mean, that's the first thing you're going to see as you pull in. So I think that that green space could be enhanced a little bit.
You want to just so we were all clear on where he's talking about?
Yep, there it is.
That one right there.
About right here? Yep.
Okay.
So, Mr. Taylor, you're asking for him to put some more trees right there?
Yeah, dress up that green space that's in front of that white wall, white wall.
Do you have the landscape plan in there, Ben?
Landscape plan does not have any landscape in there.
Okay.
The landscape plan does show this tree and this tree, but it does not show anything in this yard.
Yeah, no problem. I think we were focusing a lot on the perimeter and the buffers and the detention area, and we can definitely do something like that.
I think that's building 16.
Yeah.
Thank you.
On page 66.
Okay. Anyone else have anything for the applicant? All right, thank you for coming in. And
Thank you.
I think we're going to have a discussion now. Thank you. Is there anyone here from the public who wanted to talk about this application tonight? Okay. All right, opening for discussion. Yeah, Mr. Fox.
Well, I mean, I'm not an aesthetics guy by any stretch, but to me, this looks pretty. I'd like to hear Mr. Krent or Mr. Tagle's input on that, but to me, the fronts of these buildings, they look nice. The trees, the pathways, it looks like an enjoyable place to walk around. So I'm personally in favor of the aesthetics, but seeing as that's not my area of expertise, I'd love to hand that off to some folks where it is.
I'll go first. You know, the overall plan, let's say the bird's eye view, the plan view of this reminds me of military barracks. It just is not, you know, I mean, just row after row. I mean, if I was in the military, this is how I'd draw it with a straight ruler. Our last meeting, we reviewed a plan by Joe Mariachi. He had a development where he had similar looking architecture, but he did a lot to differentiate the buildings. They were 2 houses joined, I think 3 houses joined, 4 houses joined. Anyway, I think Joe did a much better job architecturally. Obviously, you know, I can't really say, you made some attempt, but it's so minimal. Changing the window size and a couple roof lines. It just didn't measure up to what I saw in Joe's presentation. And in addition, is this the style of housing we want to, you know, the look of it in Troy? In other words, is Troy going to be known now as row housing as opposed to let's say, creative buildings? To me, it lacks creativity. That's my only sticking point with this whole project. I like, as long as the recreational area meets the ordinance requirements, you've done a nice job on those green spaces as far as landscaping and amenities. So I have no, and utilizing a trail around that detention pond is a great idea. I think it was brought up by Ms. Mohalahali. But the point is, it was put into the plan. But, you know, your basic layout, it just looks too military. I'd love to see, you know, like Joe Mariachi has some winding roads, something to create interest as you go through the place, as opposed to, you can just be at one end and look straight through the whole thing to the other end. It just doesn't sit well with me. I realize you're maximizing your square footage, which is important economically, but it just doesn't look creative. I think Troy has a lot of creative people in it. We value that creativity, and I just don't see it here with the minor architectural changes.
Thank you. Mr. Tagle, did you want to respond?
Well,
as well?
I agree with Tom, and I think what's driving this is I'm not going to necessarily, look, sometimes the architects can only be as good as the developer lets them be. And so I think in this case, the developer says, I want to maximize the density on this site, and this is what you get. Now, we're looking, you know, and again, I agree with Tom, and we talked earlier about safety. I mean, you look at these 2 streets, and you better have some speed bumps or something in there, because people are going to be clipping along there, in my opinion. The other thing, though, I will say about the development, as you look at some of the vignettes at a lower elevation, as if you were standing in this space, there is a sense of residential character to it, you know, with the landscaping. So there's some elements that are nice. They feel comfortable. I mean, much like Mr. Fox said, you would feel at home. But when you do step back at it and look at it, it is very, very regimented, very rigid, if you will, and and again, I assume that was driven by a programmatic requirement as how many units we can get on this site.
And I guess we should just be happy we're not flying over.
That's right.
Okay. Mr. Wiekner.
I just think it's interesting. I know there are a lot of people that say we need to find the missing middle and keep our costs down, but then we want fancy and we want stone and we want wavy, and it's hard to get it all. So I guess it depends where you are that day, because you can't get it all in anything. So I like what I'm seeing.
Mr. Faison?
Yeah, another question for the architects. Ben, could you put up building type B?
Yeah, I'm an architect now.
And-
My
and
degree's
my-
electrical
my-
engineering.
My question for you guys, it just looked on building type B that the garage was the most prominent feature in the front. And I know we've had dialogue around that, so I just wanted to maybe get your take on that.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
overwhelming.
It is, but I'll tell you, every development we see, I don't care who it is, mariachi, anybody, that's what you see. Rarely are the lots wide enough where you can turn the garage on the side and enter on the side.
So I think sometimes I see them where the garage might be pushed back a little bit and the front door is pulled up more. It just
Well,
seems like the
that-
garages are further out than the front door in these cases.
I think that's a reasonable observation, but I think when you start looking at the planning of this, and to maximize, what I talked about a minute, the density, when you start pushing these elements around, you're going to lose something. If you're going to create more voids, if you will, in the facade or in the front of the building, you're going to lose some interior space. And I think, again, your observation is accurate, I think, but I think the reason for it is because we're getting back to this, how much can we get in this 10-pound bag?
Right. This kind of goes to Mr. Buechner's point a little bit as well.
But I would like to also say, I don't always equate good design with expensive design. I think creativity doesn't always have to be the most expensive option on the table. I think creativity can take forms of, it's functional, it's aesthetic, but it doesn't have to break the bank. Now, I don't know if everybody agrees with me. A lot of times, I'll tell you what, I see a lot of very, very big and expensive homes. I wouldn't give you 2 cents for. Honestly, I wonder who's thinking about this. So anyways, I'll get off my soapbox.
I've seen both of those situations. I agree.
Mr. Carlisle, can you scroll down a little bit so I can see the previous one?
This is the same one. I'll have to go back to the PowerPoint to.
Oh, where you had them side by side.
Like me to
My
pull
only
them out?
comment was going to be that I believe in the new rendition, they added the windows to the garage.
They did, I saw
Okay.
that.
So, I mean, my feeling about this development, I kind of echo over here what you guys were saying, but I do appreciate Mr. Tagle's comments about being down in it and getting that, Mr. Fox alluded to it too, that maybe you get a feeling of neighborhood, even though it's very regimented, I guess. But I can get past that, I think. I do want to touch on Mr. Lambert's comment about the circulation, because that was a concern I had from the beginning. I mean, I think I've come around a little bit, because I do feel that the circulation of the southern property has been improved so much. I still don't, I think it is a mistake to close it off, because if if I were going to move into that area, and I lived way at the other end, I would like to have the option to get out on Big Beaver, and then, you have to be concerned that they're just going to cut through Kroger anyway. So you're going to get the cut through to get to Big Beaver either way, whether it's across running off the face of Kroger or behind. And now that whoever fixed the circulation back there, I do feel a little bit more comfortable with that. The other idea is they can come out and they can, well, I'm looking at it on my screen, but if they're, can you put the?
Yeah, I'm going to go up to, just give me a second here.
Yeah. Because if they come out that, where we're talking about making it an EVA, they could just take an immediate left and drive behind the buildings as well.
I think this shows the entire
Yeah.
site.
So if they came out and they didn't want to go to Big Beaver, but they happen to live on the west side, they can just go through the alley for lack of a better word, and go, it doesn't necessarily mean they have to be cutting across, but it actually takes them out of the development. So instead of speeding through the neighborhood, I hope they're not speeding anywhere. But maybe there's less kids in the alley. I mean, ultimately, we're looking at the safety. I see the crosswalks. We've talked about the crosswalks. I think they're well marked, right? I mean, we have them there. I don't know if we talked about, I'm trying to remember now, but did we talk about the speed bumps and all that? I mean, should that be part of this?
The other question I have, is there parking allowed on the street? Is the street wide enough to accept parking on one side?
I don't think so, no.
See, because that's another way to slow traffic down.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah.
So maybe if I don't know where we're at with the resolution, but I think one thing maybe we should think about adding in, there was something else and I don't know if I wrote it down, but the one thing is whether we need any traffic calming on the alley within the development or none. Yes, Mr. Fox.
I think to that point, so looking at both of the options, if you're exiting out of that westmost exit, if you make that immediate left, there is parking on either side of that alley. So to Mr. Takel's point, that does discourage just floor it and shooting it. And I will say, if you do go directly south, some of the mitigations that we saw with the previous build at Starbucks with the curb bump out and all of that, it's basically taken that straight line and it's turned it into a bunch of curves, which that's going to naturally slow people as well. So for me personally, I think that there's enough there that I think leaving it open has more benefits than negatives, I would say. That's where I'm at personally, but.
Mr. Buechner?
I think it's fair to ask the applicant to speak on speed bumps or traffic thoughts of slowing them down. Curious what your thoughts are.
I don't personally have any issue with some kind of a speed hump, or we just strategically locate them at high points in the road so it wouldn't adversely affect any storm drainage along the curb line, but
snow removal gets tricky.
Yeah. That's why the newer style nowadays is they're kind of calling them tables, but they just have a little more gradual slope up so that when the snow plow doesn't hit it so, aggressively. But I don't think we would be opposed to that.
Do you recommend it? Or are you against it? Or think it's needed?
Can I ask a question while you're thinking about that? In terms of, these aren't roads per se, I guess, but is there going to, will there be signs, speed limit signs within that development? 15 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour?
I'll defer to Mr. Mosny. I mean, they're not public roads, so we don't, regardless of what they post as speed limit, the city will not enforce the speed limit within the development.
That is correct, yeah. The city won't enforce the speed limit.
Can I address 2 points that were made? Mr. Tagle raised the question about on-street parking. We actually did look at the potential for on-street parking, and if you'll notice, so this is a garage door, driveway. There really isn't any, just because of the proximity and location of so many garage doors, there's no room to put on-street parking anywhere in this development, even if the roads were big enough, just because of the number of cuts of driveways. My other opinion is, and I don't know how everyone else is, but with the number of garage doors, I personally tend to slow down when there's this length of number of garage doors, just because I'm afraid of when the garage door is going to open, what's going to pop out. So we can certainly work with the applicant with regards to we would probably put a speed table somewhere, in these locations at the pedestrian crossings. We can work with the applicant, but I do think just the number of driveways and garage doors is a natural deterrent from cars speeding down that road.
I mean, I would even venture to say that the pedestrian crossing, if it's well marked, will slow people down as well. And even with perhaps, the signs, children at play, whatever, when you enter so people get the idea that this is, you know, you're supposed to move slowly throughout. Okay. All right. Any other questions for the applicant? He's standing up here again. Okay.
I mean, I was pondering a speed table thought, and you guys asked my opinion on it.
Oh, yeah. Did you not respond? Tell us your opinion on the speed table.
No, I don't, I was just, Ben actually brought up the great point with the way the driveways are. I think people might tend to speed a little bit more, and I hate to say it, but like a residential street where it's kind of more defined, whereas these are more like drives in a way. And yeah, when you've got driveways and parked cars in the driveways presumably, and yeah, people maybe coming and going out of their garage doors, might, at least your spidey senses are tingling a little, like you're not just, but people, people do that sometimes regardless here, and you're kind of in your own world just thinking about what you got to do and where you got to go, and you sometimes don't consider, I mean, that's.
There's no driveways on the buildings on the south side, is there? They're backing right out into the street.
Yeah, on the south side. Yeah, more along the north,
Right.
the north drive. I don't know, I'm not a traffic engineer, really. I don't know what kind of triggers a need for a speed hump. I've done other residential subdivisions where, it's kind of been expressed where there was more of a concern about cut-through traffic. And people wanted a speed table so people weren't speeding through their street as a kind of a more of a cut-through access to, I think it was off Livernois and Rochester Hills where I'm thinking, but.
Yeah, Mr. Lambert.
As an alternative to speed humps, I mean, sometimes the placement of landscaping along the edges of the drive or the street can slow traffic down as well. So I don't know if you have enough room to do some enhancements with landscape along the edges, but that's another alternative to speed humps or whatever they're called now.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that either.
Now that I'm looking at that aerial page, the southern line of houses, there's no driveway requirement? Those garages lift up and they just exit right into the street, that's fine?
Well, I mean, it's not exactly, I think, what do I got, 4 or 5 feet there or something like that. But
Oh, I mean, right,
the
okay.
curb is inset.
But not enough for a car to be.
Not
parked.
fully out, yeah, no.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Fox?
I think on the topic of traffic mitigation, there are tons and tons of options, and I think I would argue that new options and ways to mitigate traffic are getting, I don't want to say invented, but, tested and tried out every day. So I almost wonder, for the sake of the motion tonight, maybe just something vague to the extent of, speeding mitigation to the satisfaction of the planning department. That way we know that, they're going over it with our planning consultant, with our planning department, and, whatever conclusions they come to, they can kind of be more flexible and base it off of what fits best in the situation. Because traffic, I will say, speeding, super important, very important to address it. I know Sterling Heights is launching big programs to understand it and everything, so I think we just leave it a little fluid and leave it to our lovely team here.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you. I'm turning it back to, if anyone wants to make a resolution or continue the discussion, go ahead.
I will make a resolution if there's nobody else who's interested in discussion. Where is it? Okay. Be it resolved that preliminary site plan approval pursuant to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed John R. Gardens townhome development located on the east side of John R., north of Big Beaver, Section 23, zoned MF multifamily residential district, be granted subject to the following, and safety, the applicant explores speeding mitigations to the satisfaction of the planning department would be the condition.
Do we have a second?
I'd second that.
Okay, Mr. Buechner. Any further discussion, comments? Yeah, Mr. Faison.
Is the speeding mitigation inside the development, or is it also inside the parking lot?
So, can't see it here, but, well, you can see it here. They've added a slow sign and a 10-mile-per-hour sign here. And they've got a crosswalk here. That's part of the site plan.
But when we're talking about the resolution, it's inside the development.
Well,
Is that?
Yeah, if Mr. Buechner would support it, I would be willing to say the site as opposed to just the development, because then it's covering the whole site on the corner. Does that address your concern?
I wasn't raising it because I was concerned. I was raising it for clarification.
Oh, sure. Okay.
It's worth having the discussion. I'd do it for the whole site.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah,
agree.
for example, if you're reviewing it and you like those 10-mile-per-hour signs and you want them along the back
Yeah.
alley, then it would be nice to be able to ask them to do that.
So for Ms. Zarnecki's sake, it would be the resolution as written on page 36 of our packet, as well as the pursuant to the following, it would be exploring speeding mitigation on the entire site to the satisfaction of the planning office.
You good with that? You okay with it, Mr. Buechner? Okay. Any discussion? Yeah, Mr. Lambert.
I like everything with the project, except I still believe that there's a safety concern, in my opinion, at that western entrance, so I'm going to be reluctantly voting no.
All right. I think we're ready for the roll call.
Mr. Lambert,
No.
Ms. Malala-Holly,
Yes?
Ms. Parakis,
Yes.
Mr. Tagle,
Yes.
Mr. Buechner.
Yes.
Mr. Faison,
Yes.
Mr. Fox.
Yes.
Mr. Hudson,
Yes.
Mr. Krant.
Reluctantly, yes, because I'm not thrilled about the barrack look.
Motion carries, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Yep, thank you. So that takes us through the major items. Now we are at public comment for items that are on the agenda. Is anyone here to speak about something that we've already discussed tonight? Seeing no one coming up, I will move on to Planning Commission comment. And I will start over here with Mr. Fox.
I guess just a quick question. I know we discussed earlier that we're kind of in the middle of the zoning, reworking the zoning pursuant to the approved master plan. I know parking is a conversation we haven't had here in a while. I have folks, I will say, who keep asking me about parking, so I keep bringing it up. Is the reanalysis of our parking requirements just in a part of the process right now of looking at the ordinances?
Yeah, we've kind of bifurcated the ordinance updates based on what we deem as important.
Okay.
So the first thing is we're going through based on the master plan to update it based on the master plan specifically with the nodes, so that the steering committee is met, discussing that. We hope to have that in front of the whole planning commission. I think the date is August or September. September at this point for consideration. Once that's done and through, then we're gonna look at parking and come up with a complete parking analysis amendments to the ordinance. So expect that probably fall-ish time.
Amazing. Thank you, and thank you to all the work you're doing on all that. I know it's a massive process of going through all the ordinances, so thank you.
Mr. Buechner? Mr. Hudson?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Faison?
So I was going to support something you said earlier about, you mentioned maybe doing an analysis of the level of apartments in Troy. Maybe you said constructed recently. I would be curious to know how it compares to the single-family homes. And also, and I've seen this data before, but years ago, just demographics of Troy in terms of who's in the homes, the age of the residents, kids in the schools, kids in the home, just to better understand the new development, how it fits with what Troy currently is versus what it was like 20 or 30 years ago, which is what we hear from the audience sometimes. And so that we're making, or at least I feel with that information, I'd be making better informed decisions about new.
How do we get that data?
Well, I was just going to say, is that something we're asking you to do for us?
I work for the pleasure of the Planning Commission, so.
I mean, that would be something that I would be interested in. Along with that, I would be interested to know, I don't know if you mentioned, but like who's renting versus buying. But then the other thing, and I don't know if this is a thing, but to take other cities that are like Troy in terms of population and other demographics and create a pie chart and say, similar communities have this percentage of renters, this percentage of apartments, this percentage of single-family homes, just so we see where we stack up. Are we short? Are we too many?
We do this all the time, so this is nothing new that we can produce. The data is readily available, combination of SEMCOG, census data. We've got our own access to private data. So, yeah, it's something that we could produce, and it would be a comparison of the numbers you talked about, the demographics talked about, but also comparable to like communities and how Troy compares or doesn't compare to those communities. And then you can make some policy decisions based on that information.
That would be really helpful. Thanks for bringing it up again. Sure. Mr. Lambert.
Just to kind of add into that, as part of the subcommittee, I'm sure that'll be something that'll be looked at as well, because some of the neighborhood nodes are where most of the friction occurs, especially when it comes to apartment buildings or any kind of multifamily. So I'm sure that's something that we'll take a look at as well. And even though there's only one person here from the group that was here earlier tonight on the one more controversial subject, appreciated everyone's by and large calm comments and lack of applause, so appreciate that. So.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Yeah, just, so Ben, when you do pull out the data, will you also be putting in, based on different housing that we have, not just the single family and the apartments and the townhomes, but generally speaking, will you be able to put some data into that missing middle kind of a situation?
Yeah, we can get pretty specific with the data. I mean, we can get into like number of bedrooms, square footage, sizes, I mean, different types. So yeah, before I commit to exactly what, let me do a little diving into the data, see what we have. But I think I understand the direction that you're looking for.
Okay, good. That would be helpful, yes.
Mr. Craig?
Oh, yes. Tomorrow is another one of Oakland County's planners gathering. They're talking about how to turn brownfields into greenfields. So that's tomorrow. You can go to the Oakland County website for planning, and it's just a webinar. It's from 10 to 11 in the morning.
Thank you. Mr. Tagle?
Thank you.
Mr. Motson?
No, thank you.
Mr. Carlin? All right, that's all for me as well. The meeting is adjourned.
All right.